3rd, 2025 meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. We have two meetings this evening, a special Board of Commissioners meeting and a Finance Committee meeting. Before we start, please silence your cell phones. There's amplifying equipment available for those who are having difficulty hearing. The room is also equipped with telecoil technology. Later, when the floor is open for public comment, we will first take comment from those who are present in the room, then we will turn to comment from those who are attending virtually. We ask that you introduce yourself and say where in the township you live before starting your comments. So with that, will the December 3rd, 2025 special meeting of the Board of Commissioners of the Township of Lower Merion please come to order and all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Woodring has asked to be excused. Other commissioners aren't here, they're just out of the room. Mr. Bernheim.
Present.
Mr. Churchill.
Present.
Ms. Epstein. Here. Mr. Gabbard.
Here.
Mr. Grimes.
Here.
Ms. S. Kramer.
Here.
Mr. Stevenson.
Present.
Mr. Zella.
Here.
Mr. Sinai.
Here.
Mr. President, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We're going to start with the public hearing on the proposed 2026 budget and proposed 2026 to 2031 capital improvement program. So we're going to open the second public hearing on that. And this public hearing was authorized for advertisement at a stated meeting of the Board of Commissioners held October 22nd, 2025, and duly advertised in the November 9th, 2025 edition of the Mainline Times and Suburban. So the first public hearing was held on November 19th, 2025. The vote on the budget is on December 17th. I'm going to start with our CFO, Adam Chunsky, for a presentation.
President Sinai, good evening, Board of Commissioners. I'll run through a condensed version of the budget presentation we saw last month. To start us off, the proposed 2026 budget calls for the raising the expenditure of $83.8 million in the general fund while raising $79.3 million in revenues. And the use of fund balance in the amount of $4.6 million. This would result in an ending fund balance of near $18 million, or 21.4% of expenses at year-end 2026. To present this budget, we did propose in the budget a 9.5% real estate tax increase, as well as the increased meter rates in the township that is currently under board consideration. Absent these two revenue recommendations, the deficit spend would have been significant at over $8 million. The 2026 general fund revenues of $79.3 million are shown here in greater detail, with real estate taxes making up nearly 50% of the total revenue. Total taxes, including business taxes, transfer taxes, and local services taxes, total about 3/4 of the 2026 budget. This slide just provides a little bit of the year-to-year budget-to-budget changes. I will note that although the headline tax millage increase is 9.5%, we have seen a decline in our assessed value in the township, mostly owing to commercial office space assessment appeals and also some demolitions for future land development projects. We do also anticipate growth, as we're seeing currently, in our business and mercantile taxes and those parking meters I noted to you. On the downside at the bottom, besides the reduction of one-time revenues, we are experiencing a higher utilization of our healthcare in our healthcare consortium, and that's going to impact the refund that we see, which is a direct result of that utilization. On the expense side of the ledger, as is typical for Pennsylvania municipality, of course, police is our largest single cost center in the general fund, comprising just over 1/3 of the budget. General government and public works each make up about 13% of the budget, general government being the manager's office, finance, human resources, IT, legal, and other non-departmental charges. Debt service is 11.5% of the budget, which is on the lower side of the last decade. The general fund is a personnel-heavy budget. Personnel costs make up 2/3 of the budget, and that debt service another 11%. Everything else comprises about a quarter of our budget, from utilities, professional services, and contracted services, materials and supplies, charges for our equipment, and fire company contributions. The budget-to-budget changes going into 2026 include a net salary and benefits increase of 4.96. We'll talk about the drivers of that in a moment. The increase in debt service in the amount of $800,000 compared to 2025, owing to the added cost of debt with our 2025 bond issuance, net of some of our declining debt portfolio. The last time I'll probably say this is on the downside, our utility savings owes to the LED conversion and us realizing all those savings on a budget basis now that we've had a year plus of experience with those electricity savings. The 2026 budget does not recommend any added personnel. So we are holding at 226 full-time staff and 493 full-time equivalents, including our part-time staff. As I noted, one of the main drivers and pressures on the expense side was healthcare in this past year. After years of below market average growth in our healthcare premiums, we were hit with a significant increase this year, nearing 20%. This is a combined impact of the health insurance inflation the entire consortium of municipalities is facing, around 10%, and another 10% of our utilization, which is our actual claims experience compared to expected. The township will make a $450,000 contribution to the pension plan in 2026, as we're obligated to actuarially. That is a small decline from 2025's estimated figure. And other employee benefit costs are projected, of course, to grow with payroll costs. The township's debt, total debt outstanding has been declining in the past several years, partially owing to the availability of American Rescue Plan funds to fund capital projects. The township did issue $24 million of bonds this year, split between the capital projects fund and the sanitary sewer fund, so our outstanding debt at year-end 2025 will be $93.4 million. The proposed capital budget is projected to, of course, require additional debt issuance. The timing of that will depend on spend down and discussions with the board later in 2026 or early 2027. So the proposed tax increase of 9.5% would impact residents, as shown here, based on assessed values. I'll remind everybody that assessed values do not equal market values. The county has not reassessed since the late 90s. So if you bought a house recently at $600,000, your assessed value is likely a third of that value. So certainly want to make sure that you're thinking about your assessed value and not your market value of your house. The median house in Lower Merion is assessed at just under $300,000. This would entail an increase from 2025 of $122. A short note on our capital improvement program. I have two slides here. The total CIP across all funding sources, local as well as grants and other outside funding, total $64 million for 2026. The top 10 projects shown here total about 2/3 of that spend. 9 of these 10 have some, or in one case, an entirety of its allocation owing to outside funding. The affordable housing headline there is exclusively low-income housing tax credits available to the developer for the Ardmore House 2 project. Second, of course, on this list is the Ardmore Avenue Community Center and the PUM, which is currently under construction. We anticipate the remainder of that project to total $10.5 million in 2026. This slide presents the same information, but stripping out all outside funding sources to show just the obligations to the township and residents that will be made up with debt proceeds, either currently in hand or future. And again, a lot of these are the same, but some other new ones pop into the mix. Again, this 23 million is about 2/3 of the 36 million total, looking at township costs exclusively. So looking forward, as we always do, into the next few years, we run our budgeted figures against some conservative assumptions about expenditure growth and revenue growth while holding current services and the proposed 2026 millage rate flat across those years. And these conservative estimates would suggest that without further policy action, we would see the ending fund balance trend into below the 15% threshold that our fund balance policy would require action. Of course, we've recently seen a high amount of volatility on our revenue side, owing to some seesaw action in our business taxes, as well as the inherent difficulty of projecting real estate transfer taxes. So here we present some more optimistic scenarios of revenue based on past trends to show you the baseline in orange being the baseline budget projection and incrementally adding in some of those more experience-based revenue projections. And obviously the huge delta going out in time just owes to the volatility in business taxes and transfer taxes. Okay. Two notes that I added since our last public hearing. One of the areas that we have also seen cost pressures is the solid waste fund. So we discussed earlier this year an increase to the solid waste fee for 2026 in the amount of 5%. We reduced some charges to the equipment fund in 2025 to help the fund. We've discussed introducing a $20 per entry fee for cleanup weekends. I wanted to bring to your attention what we've crafted for 2026. One of the outstanding items, the last one, the special pickup, which we found was not fully covering the costs of that service, which is currently a base charge of about $40 for 3 items, and then it's quoted for anything beyond that. Excuse me, I went up too far. So administratively, we are updating this charge to more accurately reflect costs. The base will go up to $80 for 3 items, and then $20 per additional item up to 10 items maximum. We'll also introduce an additive per item charge for major household appliances such as refrigerators, freezers, and stoves and the like. And this new fee is estimated to come within, full cost recovery, which would add about $25,000 to $35,000 a year in the solid waste fund. Lastly, I just wanted to touch base on 2 items that are not in the proposed budget that we did discuss at the September budget workshop. The Public Works project manager position was proposed, but due to the tax increase that we're proposing and the discussions that we've had, we pulled that from the proposed budget, as well as the HR employee recognition software that garnered a considerable amount of discussion during the workshop. And this is the second to last step on our budget workshop or budget process for the year. Tonight being the second public hearing and the budget amendments, and scheduled for December 17th is the adoption, and of course the board is at its leisure to amend up to that point as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Adam. We're going to now open the floor for public comment. So if you want to address the board, we're going to ask that you use this podium to your left. If you're on Zoom and you want to address the board, you're going to go after the people who are here in person in the room, though we ask that you raise your virtual hand now. If you have comments about the items in the Finance Committee for later, such as that's where the bids are, right? Yes. Comment for that is being taken in the Finance Committee meeting. This is only for comments on the budget and the capital improvement plan. Anyone wish, you come up, state your name, where you live in the township, before beginning your comments. We ask that you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. The township secretary has a timer. It will beep at the end. It's a very big number. You can see it from throughout the room. When it beeps, we ask that you stop. Please, anyone wish to comment on the budget?
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yeah.
Rob Carvolano, I am the Deputy Chief and Interim President of the Union Fire Association. Been a volunteer here in the township for over 20 years now.
First item in the finance committee.
No, I'm commenting on the budget.
Okay.
Thank you. I wanted to thank the board for their continued support of the 6 fire companies in the township, and would just like to remind you, as we point out every year, that our costs have continued to outpace the increase in allocation to the fire companies. We hear very often that we should just fundraise more, but to be frank, the firefighting is an essential public safety service that should be funded by every taxpayer in the township, not just a few that are able to donate to our fund drive campaigns. And that's my only comment on the budget. Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Good evening, Alec Hirsch, Ardmore Initiative. I just wanted to come up this evening and address something that was mentioned a few moments ago, which is the proposed increase to the meter parking rates in Lower Merion. As I'm sure this board knows, earlier this year, Ardmore Initiative collaborated with Lower Merion Township on a parking management plan, and it was in that plan, the recommendations that it made, one of those recommendations was the increase in metered parking rate to become more commensurate with the industry standard for parking rates in comparable communities. So I just wanted to come up this evening and address that proposal and offer my sincere and heartfelt encouragement for that increase. As the executive director of the Ardmore Initiative, advocate for the increase. I believe that it will be considerably supportive for the projects undertaken by Lower Merion Township without being meaningfully harmful to the consumer in the township. So I think it's a terrific proposal. I fully endorse it, and my board has not gotten a chance to meet and vote on a resolution since this was brought up, but my anticipation and my hope is that that board will vote to authorize a resolution affirming what I have just said, that I can then come back and read to you at your meeting on the 17th. So thank you again, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wish to comment on the budget of the CIP? Please come up.
My comment is about the budget, but there is 70 to 80 seconds of relevant introduction.
Sorry, if you could start by introducing yourself. If you could start by introducing yourself, stating your name and where you live.
Craig Olliner, Marion Station. First of all, I want to acknowledge those commissioners who responded so favorably to my recent tree canopy email. It's good to know that there's common cause. Thank you. I want to quote from some of the replies to give you a sense of the board's enthusiasm. Thank you for your message and your letter. I hear your concerns about tree canopy. As far as trees, you're speaking to the choir. You make some good points that merit consideration. I am hopeful that some recommendations can be brought before the board from an ad hoc committee. Funny you should mention that tree-lined streets slow traffic. We have planned Presidential Boulevard with trees for that same reason. The new conversion of parking lots to sustainable, walkable, rideable, specify shade trees, not parking lot trees. I photograph holes in the canopy and report them to Joe Marco, Shade Tree Division. I will touch base with staff to see what more can be done about street trees. I have been trying to get residents in my area to sign up. The current recommendations in the canopy study do not go far enough, in my opinion. I thank you for your expression. I completely agree with you. Second, the Bartlett Tree Canopy report's most important recommendation, in fact, the only proposal that would materially increase tree canopy, the only one, was for the township to plant more trees. The Shade Tree Division's budget, however, its 2026 proposed budget, does not allow for that, but it should.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room wish to comment on the budget or the CIP? Okay, Joe, do you have anyone online?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay, so we are going to close the public hearing. I'm going to ask if any of my fellow board members want to respond to any of the comments. We will actually debate this later in Finance Committee when we talk about amendments and stuff, but anyone wish to respond to any of the comments? Commissioner Bernheim.
Thank you very much, President Khanna. And Deputy Chief Caravano, thank you for coming forward. Your comment about funding is, in my humble opinion, spot on. That at some point in time, while I would not ever want to dissuade any of the fire companies to stop seeking the funding that they are able to obtain, we as a township should not have our fire companies dependent upon those efforts. And somewhere down the line, we need to change that paradigm. Won't be happening this evening, but it is something that I think should be on the to-do list, and I appreciate you bringing that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. Commissioner Zoll.
Thanks, President Sinai. To the Executive Director for the Ardmore Initiative, thank you for your support for the meter rate increases, which have not occurred in 25 years. I would also ask the Ardmore Initiative to consider something that we have talked about very briefly here recently, which was increasing the time in which meters are applicable in the business districts where we have a lot of restaurants, meaning Ardmore and Bryn Mawr, where they would increase rather than stop being enforced at 6 p.m. but go until 8 p.m., which would be a fairer way to between retailers and dining, and also would encourage the turnover in front of restaurants that we encourage with meter enforcement during the day for stores. And so that's something that I think that will be discussed in the coming months here, and so I'd ask that the Ardmore Initiative consider that, as I have done so with the Bryn Mawr Business Association. Thank you, President Simon.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoll. Commissioner Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you for the presentation. I want to talk about an issue that was discussed, that was briefly discussed, but is a major impact on our township, and that is the increasingly cost of health care coverage. And while I know our Director of Human Resources here and our township manager and team are constantly looking at the best benefits possible at the best rates, I would encourage the board to not make that not allow this to lose a priority of ensuring that our employees have adequate health care. As costs increase, I know a lot of times we look at what is the important places to cut, but I understand that we have to look at what is the best interest of the township, but I think that is an area that is going to be imperative that we ensure that our employees are taken care of that way. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevenson. Anyone else wish to respond to the public comment? Okay, seeing none, we are going to adjourn this special meeting of the Board of Commissioners and move on to the Finance Committee meeting. I recognize this Chair, Commissioner Zoloff.
Thank you, President Sinai. Tonight, we have 6 items on the Finance Committee agenda. I think there's a number of them that will take some work and some time by this committee and by those people from the public and the staff who are with us this evening. I'm going to also note that as we go through the items in the Finance Committee and you wish to make comments, as President Sinai said during the public hearing, please line up at the podium, which is this podium, Jody, correct? The podium to our right. And if you're on Zoom and wish to address the committee, raise your virtual hand now so that Jody is aware. And then please state your name and where you live prior to beginning your comments. We would like to enforce the 3-minute limit, which we have been doing. And, when the timer goes off, please begin to wrap up your comments. And as is typically the case, if questions are asked, we'll respond to them at the end of all comments. So with that, the first item on the committee agenda for this evening is for bidding for the Union Fire Association firehouse renovation bids. The staff has recommended that those bids be rejected, and so in order to get things moving tonight, I'm going to move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to reject all bids for Union Fire renovations received on Thursday, November 13th, 2025, as recommended by the Chief Financial Officer with the approval of the Chief Fire Officer. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Bernheim. Okay, I'm going to ask Adam Chomsky, who we will be seeing quite a bit this evening, who is our Chief Financial Officer, to provide an explanation.
Thank you, Commissioner Zella. This is a project to improve overnight accommodations for live-in firefighters on the second floor, as well as improvements to the ground floor layout to improve station engine room to better accommodate ever-growing larger emergency vehicles. The project originally started with the Union Fire Association Board of Directors, who received an LSA grant. The township had budgeted $500,000 to assist in this project. It went out to bid with an estimated cost construction of $2 million. This is a 4-prime contract. So we had bids for general, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. The bids came back about $1 million over that estimate at just over $3 million. So in order to award such a contract, the township would have to make up that $1 million difference. We are recommending at this time to reject bids and authorize potential further reduction to the scope, pause the project until the budget deficit can be bridged with other funding sources or alternative options are found. And we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Does our assistant manager want to add any further explanation? For example, if the bids are rejected, what would staff then recommend or do?
Absolutely. Good evening, Commissioners. Happy to be here. If the board were to choose to reject the bids, the township staff would have a number of options. And they are listed in your memo, but they, for the sake of the public, they include potentially rebidding this at a later time, which is not a guarantee on, the same price, higher price, lower price. We don't know where the market's going to be. This could also, another alternative would be to look at the scope of the project. There are grant funds tied to this, so potentially I've always viewed it as 2 parts, the living quarters part and the engine bay part. So perhaps we re-engineer. There would be an associated cost with redoing the documents, but maybe we pursue the living quarter part, because that is primarily what many of the grants are tied to, is the creation of living quarters. Or a third option is to explore other options, right now we've kind of just been focused on renovating the existing building. So we really haven't cracked that egg, so to speak, to look and see what other options are available in terms of fire station operations.
Great, Brandon. Thank you for that added explanation. So now we'll move on to public comment. So members of the public who are with us in the room wish to comment on this item, please come to this podium. Yes, introduce yourself if you would, and let us know where you live.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name's Harry Jaron. I'm a volunteer with Union Fire Association. I've been a volunteer in Lower Marion Township for about 12 years now. I've served on the board of directors of Union Fire Association for the last 5. I appreciate you giving me a few minutes tonight to speak on this project. My goal tonight is to put this project in a bit of a wider context. So my job is I'm a consultant for fire and EMS departments around the country working on capital projects. And Lower Merion is very unique in that we still, for a municipality of this size, to retain a majority volunteer combination system is very unusual. And we're very special in that regard. And I can tell you from personally responding to almost 2,000 emergencies in this township myself, and I can tell you that if you call 911 tonight, we will deliver a world-class emergency response. There are not a lot of departments that are able to turn out the personnel and resources that we can. But that said, we are not immune to the same factors that have been negatively affecting volunteer departments across the country. And at a time when different emergency services around Montgomery County and around the Philadelphia metropolitan region are completely revamping their emergency services, we have to deal with the same factors. It's not just the availability of volunteers, but also because the nature of fires has changed due to changes in household materials. It's more important than ever to put firefighters in the station to ensure a quick response. We are not going to be able to rely on the 1890 emergency response model forever, in which we ring the bell, see who shows up, and then try to go fight a fire. That's not going to work for the remainder of this century and into the future. And so the only way to square the circle is to provide for additional housing options for firefighters, to put more firefighters in the station, either through increased career staffing or with live-in volunteers. And that is the goal of this project. And we need to look no further than our own township for a great example of this in Gladwin, where despite having the most expensive zip code in the township, Gladwin Fire Company has, they're typically one of the better performing fire companies in terms of personnel because they have live-in space in the station and additional properties outside the station. And listen, I realize that I'm standing here, I'm asking you for $1 million. And there's no way I can sugarcoat that. But I do want to put this in perspective that this project is an extremely cost-effective solution for Lower Merion Township. In effect, we'll be getting a brand new fire station for a total township contribution of about $1.3 million, which I believe that's already what's on the capital improvement plan. Compared to, I'm working with a fire company up in Tioga County right now on another LSA project. They got a quote for what I can only describe as a pole barn with a little tiny building attached to it for $9 million. And so the other options are just not really tenable compared to the value that the township will be getting out of this project. I'd also add that we have a relocation plan in place, and we really do need this project urgently to provide for our operations. In the last 20 years, the township has made significant public investments in our libraries, in senior centers, and I would ask you to consider whether an investment in the township's fire service is less worthy of public investment. And so in conclusion, I would strongly urge you to accept the low bids on this project and proceed with this project. And I will just conclude by pointing out that the $985,000 that was awarded for this project through LSA, the companion project to that the township was also awarded in the same year, in the 2022 LSA round, was Ashbridge House. And we were here last September to look at the bids for Ashbridge House, which was funded in part through ARPA funds, in part through a $500,000 LSA grant. The staff estimate on that project was $3.369 million, and the bids came in 43% over. And so it was a gap of almost $1.5 million that we had to cover. And in that case, we had only received one bid for general construction and two each for plumbing, mechanical, and electrical. So we had a much better bid response to this project. And that was on top of $300,000 in exterior renovations to Ashbridge House. And at that time, the staff recommendation was that, oh, well, we find the cost reasonable. And several of you noted that we had ARP funds to spend And there was a chance that if we went to rebid the project or delay it, that we would lose those funds. And so we're in pretty much the exact same situation with this project, which with a much smaller shortfall for what I would argue is a much more essential project for the township. And so again, I would strongly urge you to accept the low bids and proceed with this project. We really need it, and I can't put it in any more stark terms than that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to come forward on this item?
Sir. Thank you, Commissioner. Good to see you again. Rob Carvellano, Interim President, Deputy Chief, Union Fire Association. I'll try not to be repetitive of what Harry said, but just to give you some further background, our firehouse has existed in near its current form for over 120 years. In that time, the township has supported us with ongoing renovations as we moved from horse-drawn fire buggies to modern fire apparatus. While this project did start with the need for living quarters for volunteer firefighters, our needs didn't end there. We've had our engine bay floor subsiding into the ground for several years. We have a graciously loaned steel plate from the township preventing our trucks from sinking into the ground. When we did the engineering study for the live-in project, there was very intrusive work done, busting holes in walls and ceilings. So the project, de-scoping the project is not a reality for us. Building world-class live-in quarters for volunteer firefighters, no one is going to want to live there with the rest of the firehouse in the condition it is right now. We've also committed some substantial time and effort from our volunteers out raising money for this project. And while I recognize that we didn't meet our goals, we are to this day raising more funds for this project. Not only is rejecting this project demoralizing to us, but then we have to analyze what can we do with those funds we've raised that were dedicated to this project. What can we accomplish with the limited funding that we have? Again, looking at the financing model, as I mentioned in the budget meeting, for the fire service in the township, this is a critical public safety service and should be funded by the township. We should not be putting our volunteers who risk their lives going into burning buildings on street corners begging for money to keep existing. This project, again, is a good value for what it's gaining us. It's gaining us time. Again, it's a 120-year-old building. It is not built for the modern fire service. I think as Brandon implied, one of the potential options is a new firehouse somewhere else in the current location. That is going to cost a lot more than this project. And it would be, I would imagine, at least 5 to 10 years down the road from today. We don't have that time to preserve the volunteer fire service in this township. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public wish to come forward on this item? Okay, seeing none, Jody, are there any members of the public online who wish to come forward?
No one has their hands.
Okay. Now it's time for committee questions and comments. And I think I'm going to start with the staff because I know that the staff has been working closely with the Union Fire Association on this project, its scope, its design, and the results of the bidding and exploring options as was mentioned at the start. So Brandon and/or Ernie, do you want to add or have any reaction to the public comment?
Certainly, Commissioner, I can certainly clarify a little bit on the financial part.
Yeah.
We do have our chief fire officer, our different CFO, right, here to talk about the operational aspects of the potential improvement and what that could mean if the bids are rejected. Just from a financial standpoint, if this project is awarded, right, with what the township has paid already out of cost in terms of the design, plus the match that this board committed to, as well as earlier this year based on the preliminary estimate of about $2.2 million when we thought the project was going to be cost about that much. This board offered to provide gap funding at that point to the tune of $174,000, again, when we thought it was going to come in at a little lower. So if this is awarded with all those other factors combined, that would lead to a overall township commitment of $1.69 million. And that is design, construction, our match, the gap funding we've provided, plus out-of-pocket design costs. Another factor that I'd also like to note is that part of the financing model includes a low-interest fire loan that Union Fire Station would have to take out in order to bridge the gap even further, which the township would most likely need to guarantee on behalf of the fire company with the state, because it would be offered through the state, to the tune of $574,000. So if we were to include those funds as well, that would raise the overall township commitment to approximately $2.27 million. So that is from the financial dollars and cents, if this project is awarded, right? And I am going to turn the mic over to Fire Chief McCoy to speak a little bit about operationally, what would the impact be if this is either awarded or rejected?
Great, thank you.
Thank you. As we said earlier, we helped look for a relocation for Kimwood. We found a property on Bell Avenue that was a former garage that would have worked a little bit on the block or so from City Avenue. So we worked to find that way. The plan was they would leave their current firehouse for up to a year while the renovation was going on and coming back. From the beginning, we always supported the second floor renovation. That was a great plan. They came to us with the hope of putting in 5 or 6 bunks to have full-time firefighters and volunteers be upstairs in a brand-new living quarters, which, as the model is shown in the township, we can respond quicker. We can get trucks out in the road. We have people in the firehouse, as long as they're there during the night. Sometimes they work during the day, so depending on the activity, the day or night, you could have anywhere up to 5 or 6 firefighters in a station, including a paid fireman. The costs are what the costs are. We were all surprised when it came in 1.some million over budget. That discussion you're going to have to figure how it's going to work from there.
Okay, thank you, Jimmy. Ernie, anything to add? Okay. Questions and comments from members of the committee? I will get started. First, it goes without saying, but it always needs to be said, how much we value our volunteer fire service for saving our lives and our property. All 6 fire companies and the volunteers, as well as the career firefighters at those fire companies, are a vital part of our community. That being said, what we've heard tonight from our staff, to me, is compelling. We have a number of options that can be considered. We have grants that have a life to them. We did get a letter from Union Fire Association. All commissioners received it and said that the one-time funding sources are at risk. Our staff does not believe that to be the case. The state grants can be extended if there's reason for that. We have a situation where the actual, as we heard, the cost to the township could be as high as $2.3 million. And if this started because Union Fire Association was appropriately concerned about volunteers and the ease of getting to the fire station, that is an issue that has been addressed by, as you pointed out, the Bryn Mawr Fire Company and the Gladwin Fire Company. And in each case, they have purchased a nearby house. So maybe that's one of the options that would make sense for the Union Fire Association. The Bryn Mawr Fire Company is a small, old building that doesn't have living quarters. Gladwin is different. And so we, as a township, invest regularly and generously, regularly and consistently, I think is the right way to put it, on improvements to the 6 fire companies. It's in our capital budget each and every year, and has been. We've spent $9 million on fire company improvements in the last 25 years. And so we do, we have a budget. We have that category in the capital budget that we we regularly provide funding for. So I think that it makes sense for us to do as recommended by the staff in this case. And I just would add to the staff, if that's what this committee recommends, that we reject these bids, I would ask the staff to make consideration of other options a priority as we enter into the new year. Other committee members with questions or comments on this item? I'll call on Commissioner Gilda Kramer.
First of all, I would like to respond to something that Commissioner Zeloff said, which is a suggestion that somebody that the Union Fire purchase a nearby house. This is my neighborhood, and houses are selling for over $1 million in the neighborhood. So that's not going to save any money in our neighborhood. But I really strongly oppose the recommendation to reject all of the bids for Union Fire Association's badly needed renovation. Union Fire Association volunteers have been serving our community faithfully, and in at least one recent case, fatally, for 120 years. Ultimately, it is the township's responsibility to provide fire protection to our community. And the township and all of its residents benefit from the thousands of volunteer hours that our community members devote to keeping us all safe. Union Fire Association needs renovations to its longtime home in Ballackinwood in order to provide the best possible service to our residents. Its board members are not professional fundraisers, but they undertook to try to raise the money needed to modernize its facility, to provide affordable housing for live-in firefighters, which would improve recruitment and also response time, and also to expand its bays to accommodate new trucks, which are growing in size. In particular, the current bays cannot accommodate, as I understand it, ladder trucks that have pre-piped water, which is particularly important for our large residential and business properties in the City Avenue district, which provide a substantial percentage of our real estate and business taxes. The City Avenue district the Union Fire Association is the closest fire company to the City Avenue district. The Union Fire Association prepared the grant application for $985,000 for a DCED grant, which the township agreed to submit on its behalf, and that was granted. They also have raised over $390,000 through additional grants and from the community for this project. They've raised over $1.37 million for this project, and they're engaging in ongoing fundraising, and they've also proposed taking out and being responsible for a substantial loan. There is no question that Union Fire Association has had some management issues in the past, which likely affected its fundraising progress. However, it has a new president or interim president who formerly was the president of Union Fire Association when I first became a member of this board and began working with him in 2020, discussing the need for a project like this. He's also a longtime firefighter and is determined to continue to fundraise to make this project a reality. This board has not hesitated to spend tens of millions of dollars on major capital projects, including some that came in well over budget. As was pointed out by Mr. Jaron, in September 2024, this board approved a contract for over $4.8 million for renovations to Ashbridge House, to be used for programs for seniors by New Horizons, a nonprofit association. That bid was nearly $1.5 million over the estimate for the project. Are programs for seniors more important than the safety of our community? I do not see any point in not awarding this contract. Additional time will yield only two real options. Finding and buying land and building a new facility at a likely cost of over $10 million plus land acquisition costs, or cutting this project back to the point that the bays will not accommodate equipment that in the future. This project has already been cut in scope once, and I don't think it's appropriate to cut it a second time. This renovation project is not just for today, but for decades to come, as the volunteers at Union Fire Association to continue to put their lives at risk for our community. Let's support them and give them the facility that they need so that they can keep us safe.
Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Other committee members with comments? Yes, Commissioner Kramer.
Thank you. I have a
Commissioner
question for,
Schonberg.
thank you. I have a question for Chief McCoy. I heard some concerns from department members about risk to public safety, risk to, being able to staff fires and calls if we don't do this project. Can you talk about, let's say we don't do the project right now and we take the staff's recommendation to look at other options. How do you foresee this affecting operations of Union Fire Station?
Thank you. This project was never about public safety. This project's about building bedrooms to bring more firemen into the firehouse. Public safety is not a concern with this building. Public safety has been addressed many years ago when we changed our operational plans, when we went to a response model that we currently have now, a 5 and 2, depending. I'll give you a perfect example. I sent an email out to everybody on Monday morning about a fire we had right up the street from Kimwood. It was a first floor laundry room fire. Came as a building fire, so what that does is that sends 5 alarm companies to the call initially out of dispatch. Police got there first, confirmed fire showing, which then added the other 2. So at the time of response, within the first 5 minutes, all 7 companies in the township were going. Now, not all equipment goes, but the first 2 companies sent everything, and then we pieced from there. So with that event there, we had 4 engines, 3 ladders. Unfortunately, Union's ladder was out of service. It's not being fixed, so their ladder wasn't part of the response. Bellman Hill's ladder got there first, followed by Gladwin's ladder, Ardmore's ladder, and then Bryn Mawr's ladder came from the 7-2. Kimber brought 2 engines. Their first engine pulled in front of the building. Their other engine laid down the street. We have operated since our tragedy where we changed our model and changed our safety, where we send more people, more trucks to the fire initially, and then we back it up with the rest of the township. And then the township gets involved, we bring outside resources in to cover the firehouses. So we've made our changes to operation, bring more people to the fire scene, send apparatus to the fire scene to address our needs that way.
So thank you. So just to be clear, if we take the staff's recommendation and hold off and look at other options, we don't need to be worried that they're about recruitment at the moment at Union Fire Station. We don't have to be worried about staffing coming out of Union or response to public safety.
So right now, Union responds with the paid individuals and the volunteers to show up.
Okay.
That's the same model they've had for every year. It's the same model every fire company has.
Yep.
So depending on the time of day or time of night and the time of the incident is how many people show up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman Zella. So I see this issue is in 2 parts. The first is the one that Vice President Kramer, you just asked about and Chief McCoy just addressed, which is that what staff is telling us is that there is no impact of this decision if we don't move forward tonight with authorizing the extra money, no impact on provision of fire service. And I think that's the most, really the most important issue. I am hoping if this board, and I frankly tend to agree with staff that if it's so much over what we estimate over budget, that we should not proceed. And I would hope that next year at the proper time that this be given, this project be rethought if that's the board's decision tonight, and rebid, and hopefully bids will come out better. So that's one part of it. The other part is the issue of facilities and housing for volunteer and paid firefighters. And I want to thank Mr. Jarin in particular for raising that, because that is an issue that is literally, and on my board service, close to home for me, because we discussed this a year ago. It is, in fact, very true that our township is a very expensive place for people to live in, and that as time goes on, we will continue to face, if not a constant, but a growing issue that our volunteers and paid firefighters cannot afford to live in the communities in which they are serving. And I believe it's an issue this board should consider for Union and elsewhere, and should address. I would just like to note that this board, as I said a moment ago, because Mr. Jaron was good enough to mention Gladwin, this board had an opportunity a year ago to create additional housing for Gladwin volunteers at the Rolling Hill Cottage. And this board made by the way, a decision which this board could still make to proceed in January if it chose to do so. I only say not this month because we only got 2 more meetings. But this board made a decision, including from some who are arguing for housing for Union tonight, that they did not want to pursue that housing for Gladwin. So I just point that out because I think that this is an opportunity to urge the board to reflect on this and to see if there's more we can do for our volunteers in terms of housing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. President Sinai?
Thank you, Commissioner Zoloff. So I have a question for it's going to be for staff, but it's based on this, which is that if I recall correctly, this project was originally priced at a certain level. Then we increased the township contribution because it was more expensive, and then we increased the township backstopping through a loan. And so when the estimate came in so much higher than expected, I confess to sticker shock. And it's appropriate to say yes, we were willing to cover it after a couple of increases at the cost that we had originally estimated. But now we should at least take a pause and consider. I think that's fiscally appropriate. I think that is not, that happily coexists as an idea with a recognition that the function that Union Fire has provided and continues to provide is still going to be crucial to be provided going forward in the future, right? So we're going to need to accomplish both those things. And the question is, what is the way to you make the most cost-effective use of the township resources? The outcome of that may be simply to fund this project, and I'm not sure I know that yet, but that might just be what the answer is. And so the question I have for you is, how much time do we as a board have to revisit this? And if we come back to say, yeah, we're going to rebid it, it's going to look like this, but we've now gotten comfortable with this and we should do this, right? Versus having, if there are even any alternatives, to actually seriously evaluate. How much time do we have to make that decision, and how much time realistically does staff need to work that up?
All right. Thank you, President Sinai. A multi-pronged question as
There's only 2 questions in there at the end. Okay.
Towards the end, right? So, in terms of, I guess, one of the things that has been mentioned that we really haven't spoken to before are the engine bay improvements, right? The second part of the overall project. And as was stated, the engine bay was a part that was added on to the overall scope of the project at the very beginning. Once we said, let's do some future planning if we're doing renovations to the building. Why not explore what improvements to the engine bay would look like and make a more cost-effective project. Most notably because, as noted, the size of the engines are getting bigger. That is just the nature of the fire engine industry. They are getting bigger. They have more gadgets. Like my car, I need an IT wizard to be my mechanic oftentimes, right? So that was always part of the overall intention, future planning, right? Not an immediate need, but something that is anticipated for the future. In speaking with Chief McCoy, the next fire engine for Union is anticipated in the 2030s, correct? mid-2030s. So really, the improvements to the engine bay don't really need to be done until mid-2030s. We're not recommending we wait that long, right? But it's something that it is on the horizon and coming closer. In terms of a decision point for this board, we do have a couple grants that do have deadlines, as was mentioned by Chair Zeloff. We do have the opportunity to get extensions. The local share grant, which is the $1 million grant, I have personal experience getting extension on that type of grant, so I wouldn't worry too much about the risk there. But it would be our hope that if the board chooses to reject the bids that we take now, that we explore our options and we come back early next year within the first quarter or so to come back with a decision point. We've been operating within the box. We want to do this project. The project is in the box. If the bids are rejected, we're going to be looking outside the box. Whether it's, as was referenced, maybe it's the purchase of a house nearby. We do have a great housing staff member who does this through our affordable housing program. So we would work closely with them to explore those opportunities and then come back to this board in quarter 1 of 2026.
Okay, and just so I'm clear on this, when options come back, some of them are the outside the box options that you described. Some of them, I guess, are just changing this box a bit and going back to the housing model. And presumably, one of those options is this box.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, this box would not be taken off the table.
Okay.
We'd just be adding more onto the table.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other committee
Commissioner Zell.
members with questions or comments? Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you very much. To me, I think that we are not addressing the big concern about this project, and that is who or how are we going to pay for it? And I see three options. We can dip into our reserves an additional $1 million. We can add probably about a 3% real estate tax increase to pay for this, or we can find in our current budget some way to reduce our budget by $1 million in order to afford this. And I don't hear anyone making any of those suggestions. My personal feeling is if we want something, we should pay for it. And I think that asking for an additional 3.5% tax increase over what staff has already recommended is going to be sticker shock to our neighbors. So I don't have a particular preference because none of those choices are, would make me happy. But I think that everyone can always ask, come before us and say, we need this. No one is saying how we should pay for it. So that's where I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Others with questions or comments? Commissioner Bernheim.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Zeloff, and thank you those who spoke, and Chief McCoy and Brandon for your work on this. I don't want to be redundant of what was stated, but I do want to address it. Except maybe I'll make one exception to that, and that is noting the appreciation of all of our firefighters, the volunteers, and the paid men and women that perform the service. All of the comments, or let me back up. There was a meeting with the fire committee, myself, Commissioner Zeloff, Commissioner Woodring, our assistant manager, and Chief McCoy, and we went through every single thing we've heard here this evening in having a discussion of what to do next. And the comments that were made here this evening, whether those who are advocating we should go forward with the program now, or those who are saying that we should not, nobody said anything with which I could take disagreement, except maybe are we balancing about elderly people for fire service? Of course not. In that, we are talking about a 120-year-old building. We are talking about what we're going to do for decades to come. And we are talking about an additional $3 million and whether we're putting a Band-Aid on a more serious wound. We need to do something for the recruitment and retention of firefighters. That is something that we need for all of our fire companies. And the comment that Lower Merion is unique could not be more true. That we have 6 fire companies, and I don't take anything away from the full-time paid people, but 6 fire companies, the backbone are the volunteers. You can't find another municipality, at least in this state, maybe even in this country, that can say they do the same thing. And we do it where, as Chief McCoy indicated, that people come out on time with fire services, and it's not just, is a particular fire company closer to it where an incident is. Fire companies are not ward-bound. It is the Lower Merion Fire Service. And so in taking a look at this, there was the sticker shock, which made us state, wait a minute, if we're going to spend $3 million, what are we going to get for it? Is it going to be for decades to come? Or should we look at some of those other options and indeed look at them now so that we can make that decision? And included in those options, yes, do we look for another site? Do we look for building a new fire station? And yes, that costs $10 million, $14 million, all in, who knows? But if we're going to spend $3 million and it's only going to be for a temporary period of time for a 120-year-old building, maybe looking at that other option is something that we do. Whether we need to find appropriate living quarters and be it, other residents that are in the area for a shorter period of time while we go to some of those other options, we would be foolhardy if we didn't recognize that the sticker shock is causing a pause so that we can look for the future for what the best option is. And, as President Sinai said, at the end of that analysis, we may say, guess what? This is what we have to do, and there is no better option that's out there. Not sure of that answer, and it's the fact that I'm not sure that I say, all right, let's take this opportunity so the decision we make, we are sure about, so that it does provide for us the best fire service that we can, and be it at that particular location or one alternate location, I think that the recommendation to explore these options in recognition, and I'm glad, Vice President Kramer, you brought up the idea of fire safety, because I think in our discussion that was question number 1 that the committee asked. Does this in any way at all put any type of damper on the fire safety of the community? And we received, similar to what we heard here from Chief McCoy, that it does not. And that happens in large part for those folks that are sitting there to my right, which we appreciate. So I know that it may be, disappointment to them, others who are on their board, who I see here this evening. Please be assured that if the vote is to not accept these bids, it is to do exactly what Commissioner Zeloff said, and full speed ahead to figure out what those options are, so we are making the decision regarding Union Fire Company as promptly as we can with full information, and is something that economically we can proudly say is for decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Other commissioners with questions or comments? Commissioner Whalen.
Very briefly, because I certainly agree, I think, with all the comments that I've heard thus far among the board. And this, I think, I'll set this as a table setter for my comments basically across all of tonight. A little context. We approved a significant tax increase last year. For the first time in many years in this township, we approved a significant tax increase. This year, we have in front of us a 9.5% tax increase that's proposed. I mean, this is a cataclysmic sized tax increase that we're faced with and wrestling with, and I think is appropriate, right? We'll get to that. I think there's significant backup for that. Now, I am fully in favor of this project and fully in support of all of the fire companies, this fire company, And these are decades-long decisions, and this is our duty as a board to promote the fire companies, not today, not tomorrow, but for decades, and make sure that we are helping recruitment and everything here. But Brandon tells us that the money, the grant money can be extended. We're not losing it, so it's not to our detriment if we don't go forward with this project this year. And Jimmy said that we're not losing a detriment to the public safety. With that context, and in the larger context of the tax increases that we're having here, I think we need to look at every single project as, can this be moved to next year or a year after, when we do have the money to do the right thing and we have the time to determine what is right. And so, as much as I am in favor of this project moving forward, I can't support it this year, simply given the context of what we're facing. And I think that'll be telling for my comments the rest of the night if I need to repeat it. But unfortunately, I think that's where I'm at, and I agree with your motion, Commissioner Zoll.
Thank you. Okay. Other committee members? Seeing none. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that item passes 12-1. Thank you. Thank you, members of the Union Fire Association, for being with us tonight. Next item on our agenda is for consideration of awarding a contract for County Line Road improvements. I'll call on our Chief Financial Officer to tell us more.
So the next contract up for consideration is a $386,000 project with the low bid with G&B. Excuse me, let me find their exact name. G&B Construction Group Incorporated. If that name sounds familiar, they recently did our paving and milling contract this year and has done other work that's more similar to the project we're bringing before you right now. This includes improvements to County Line Road and Lancaster Ave intersection, including replacing and upgrading ADA ramps, modernizing traffic signals, new signage, new crosswalk and pavement markings, as well as ADA improvements at 3 intersections farther down County Line Road at the intersections of Warner Avenue, Old Lancaster Ave, and Mondella Avenue. As I mentioned, this vendor has done work for us recently to the satisfaction of the township, and I'm happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Thank you, Adam. I did go out of order on my how we should do things, so I'm going to go and to keep things moving, I'm going to move that the Finance Committee recommended the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for County Line Road improvements to G&B Construction Group in accordance with the bids received on Thursday, November 13th, 2025, with the recommendation of the Chief Financial Officer and approval of the Director of Public Works in the total lump sum amount of $386,941.63. Do I have a second? Commissioner Stevenson seconds. Okay. Thank you, Adam, for your explanation. The motion's been moved and seconded. Are there any members of the public with us this evening in the room who have questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, Jody, are there any members of the public online?
No one has their hand raised.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, now it's time for committee member questions or comments. I will just observe that these improvements flow from a traffic study that was conducted 6 years ago in conjunction with Radnor Township, because County Line is the border between the two townships. The first improvement was a traffic light. That was done a few years ago, and this is the second category of improvements. As we heard from our from Adam, the bid amount is 14% less than the estimate, and I believe the estimate goes back several years. This is not a new estimate, because this project has been in the CIP, in the network evaluation category for a number of years. And thank you for explaining the scope of the work. Do other committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that item carries unanimously. All right, on to item 3 of the Finance Committee this evening, which is for us to consider a resolution, and that would be for setting the criteria for our volunteer firefighters and ambulance volunteers to receive credits on their real estate taxes for tax year 2026. Adam, can you tell us more?
Yes, this is an annual resolution since these real estate tax rebates were introduced. This outlines the criteria by which volunteers must meet to receive that refund. Just to recap the impact on our budget, this past year, 47 eligible volunteers received rebates totaling $37,900, or an average refund of $807. So this resolution, again, merely reaffirms the criteria to receive that rebate. There are no changes to that criteria since last year.
Great, thank you, Adam. And to go back to the format that we should follow, I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of a resolution approving the 2026 criteria for the real estate tax credit for volunteer firefighters and volunteer emergency medical service personnel to qualify for the rebate of 2025 township real estate taxes. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Bernheim. Okay. The motion's been made and seconded. It's been explained by our Chief Financial Officer. Do any members of the public with us this evening have any questions or comments? Seeing none, Jody, any members of the public on Zoom wish to speak on this?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. Time for committee comments and questions. Thank you for stating, Adam, that there are no changes in the criteria, because we have been using this criteria a number of years, and this is an annual requirement, and there's no change, and it's great to see that the rebates processed in 2025 equal the number eligible. So that means all those who are eligible are going through the process, and this is an important way that we have recently been enabled to provide real estate tax credits to those who are volunteering as firefighters and medical personnel. Members of the committee with questions or comments? Commissioner Bernheim.
I will be very quick. This is a great thing. We were just talking a couple minutes ago about recruitment and retention. This is one of the few arrows in our quiver, as this board may recollect. When the legislation changed that we could go from 20% to 100%, I think we did it in less than 48 hours. The criteria is now something that is copied by the county, and while the school district has the same criteria, they still do not do enough. And I'm tired of saying that, and I hope that maybe this will be the year that I get to persuade them, with all of my colleagues here in support, that they will up the ante, which is so very critical. Thank you very much, Commissioner Zella.
Okay. Thank you, President Bernheim. Others with questions or comments? Seeing none, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that item passes unanimously. Okay, on to item 4 on our agenda tonight, which is for the committee to consider amendments to the 2026 operating budget and the 2026 to 2031 capital improvement plan budget. Both have been proposed by management, and those budgets, proposed budgets can now be amended by the commissioners if we wish to do so. We're going to start with questions or comments from members of the public. There have been a number of proposed amendments to the budget that were published in the agenda, 5 of them, I believe, and when we get through those 5, committee members can propose additional amendments if they wish. Do any members of the public here have any comments on the amendments that have been proposed? Seeing none, Jody, are there any members of the public online who have any questions or comments?
No one has their hand.
Okay. So we will go down the list of comments, go down the list of proposed amendments. We'll start with item 1, which is a proposed budget amendment that was advanced by Commissioner Gilda Kramer. Commissioner Kramer.
I am not going to propose this budget amendment of $12,600 for refurbishing library chairs at the Bala Cynwyd Library. Not that they don't need to be refurbished, and not that I don't think that the township should cover the cost, but I've learned that the issue is much more complex than I initially understood. There are several concerns that are interrelated. The first is the effect that using funds that are raised by the libraries for capital issues like the furniture issues would have an impact on a library's ability to meet its 12% of expenses fundraising target in order for the library system to qualify for $250,000 from the Commonwealth for, I guess it's an excellence grant. I don't know the details of it, but the second is the issue of who should be responsible for major furniture expenses. And this is affected by a memorandum of understanding from 1980. And the third issue is that the issue that I think is involved with this is the impact of rising salaries on the fundraising goals of the libraries in order to meet their 12% targets. These issues, I think, are too complex to address as a budget amendment and should be the subject of a priorities discussion in 2026. And therefore, I won't be making this proposed budget amendment, but I do hope that these issues will be carefully considered and analyzed in 2026.
Okay. If there are no questions or comments from committee members, we'll go on to proposed amendment number 2, and I will again turn to Commissioner Gilda Kramer.
First of all, I am proposing that the proposed motion to explore with a partnership with the JCC relating to enclosing the pool in exchange for public pool hours and a long-term lease on a potential multi-purpose field be amended to put this into the CIP for 2027, not 2026. In further discussions with Manager McNeely and the JCC, it became clear that the proposed timetable for this project was for 2027, not 2026. So I do support putting this project in the CIP for 2027 for the amount of $1.25 million and allowing Manager McNeely to fully explore the parameters of a partnership with the JCC for both public year-round pool access and a multi-purpose field space for our residents. Since the Y moved to Havertown and the JCC had to remove its pool enclosure some years ago, we have not had a publicly available indoor pool in the township, except for the high school pool, which has extremely limited hours. And I've been unsuccessful in getting those hours expanded. And this does not meet the needs of many of our residents. We provide tennis courts, basketball courts, pickleball courts, and field space for our residents, but no viable option for year-round indoor pool, fitness, or therapeutic exercise. There is also an economic argument to be made for this collaboration with the JCC. The JCC has a somewhat overgrown and largely unused field in the eastern part of the township where the densest population resides. And there is a potential for a long-term lease of the field included in the $1.25 million requested for the 2027 CIP for the pool project. While the space would require some work to be converted to a usable multi-purpose field, the total cost would likely be the same or less than the amount that we have currently budgeted in the CIP, $1.55 million, to create a multi-purpose field on Youngsford Road, which is the amount there is due to the difficult topography of that particular location. In other words, for the same amount or less than it would cost us to build a multi-purpose field on Youngsford Road, we could assure year-round indoor pool access for our residents, which is a significant new amenity, and also have a field in a better location. So, I mean, obviously there are many, many details to be ironed out and negotiated between Manager McNeeling and Alan Schur of the JCC. But putting this $1.25 million in the CIP for 2027 would allow them the time to work out the many details of the potential collaboration. This is really no different than putting a number in the CIP for a skate park when we don't even have a location for it, or for putting a number in the CIP for the Youngsford Road field. We haven't committed to spending the money yet, but to the concept of exploring a mutually beneficial collaboration.
Commissioner Kramer, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I would like to make a motion. I move that we consider for recommendation to the board to amend the proposed 2027 budget to add $1.25 million to the Capital Projects Fund to finance a partnership with the Kaiserman JCC to enclose its swimming pool, develop a long-term lease, make facility available year-round for residents, subject to negotiations between the Kaiserman JCC and the township.
A motion has been made. Is there a second? Commissioner Churchill seconds. Commissioner Kramer has explained the reason for her motion. Are there other committee members who have questions or comments? President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeloff, and thank you, Commissioner Kramer, for bringing this up. I think leaving aside the merits of the proposal, and I'll say from the outset that I am someone who, for a very long time, has been eager to see a field in that portion of the township. I'm a little bewildered about like considering this evening. I mean, I cannot see, it's $1.25 million, and I cannot see how this board can possibly evaluate it based off of the information that we have or don't have. Right? We don't know how much usage we would be able to get out of it. We don't know, whether the school on the site would need access to the fields. We don't have a staff analysis. We don't have, any of the preliminary negotiations worked out. Wouldn't need to be finalized, but I think we would need more information about what we would get for the money. And we don't have an analysis of the budget. We just have an estimate from the JCC. And I would think that we would have something from staff. I think we would have something from the director of Parks and Rec. I would think this came from the Parks and Rec chair. I would think it should come through the Parks and Rec committee, right, for the board to consider. And all the exploring and working out the details would be the things that would get worked up before the board would decide whether to add to CIP or not. Because I think we add things to the CIP because we have decided we have the intent of doing them. Not because it's a placeholder for considering them later. And so, like, why don't we have this? I mean, like, there is a process in place for doing exactly this, which is to bring this up in the beginning of the year in the priorities workshop, right? And this came up in the priorities workshop. It was raised in the priorities workshop. It tied for 27th, and so staff did not work it up. They had other things to do. I would be happy to support it in the priorities workshop for next year. I think it'd be the appropriate time to do it. I think then we would have the ability to make a thoughtful decision on it, but I think we need to make sure we bring things to more information that is given by commissioners to staff to develop with the support of the board for the effort in developing it, rather than us coming individually to do it. And there's a reason for this, which is the outcome of at budget time bringing things forward. And I will say there's a history of boards in the past having done it that way, is that you get 14 commissioners with $1 million quarter projects, all bringing it on the 3rd of December for us to decide about, and that is just not a good way to make decisions, right? So we need to accelerate it to the beginning of the year, get people on board to support the idea that should be a priority of the board, and get it developed. And I hope we do it that way. Thank you, Commissioner Zoloff.
Thank you, President Sinai. Other members of the committee with questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, Commissioner. I think I'm coming down on the same place as President Sinai, but I did have 2 questions. Do we know, will this require any of our staff time to manage any of the construction, or would this be just us funding and the JCC entirely doing it?
Ernie?
That is one of those things that would have to be worked out in the details that we're missing right now as to who runs the project. But indeed, if we're putting $1.25 million into a capital project, even if it is run by the JCC, we still are going to have to abide by our state requirements with respect to prevailing wages and bid process and all of that. So, but that's one of those things that would have to be worked out.
Yeah, and then my other question, I guess maybe is directed to Commissioner Kramer, which is that putting something in the out years of CIP is a way for us of planning and signaling an intention, but it is not a commitment. And so if the JCC were to act on us doing this, and then we would push it out, as we have with many capital projects, would they be able to move forward without our funding? Would they be able to, would they delay if we delayed?
So if I could, I mean, I don't really want to have a Q&A among the
Sure.
commissioners.
I'm just trying to get information
Yeah.
about the project, but if that information is not available, like normally I would say putting it in the out years I think this is a great idea. I think an indoor pool and an additional field will be great amenities for the township, and I would support putting it in the out years, except that it sounds like there might be a dependency of a third party on us feeling like this is some sort of a commitment that it really isn't yet. And so that's why I was asking Commissioner Kramer, but maybe Ernie, you could answer that. Who might know the answer to that?
Well, I have had multiple conversations with Alan Scher from the JCC, and they have to go through a fundraising process themselves. They're looking to raise over $7 million to do both the pool and a fitness center development at the site. So I don't know that there is an answer yet as to, I'm sure that JCC would not proceed without awaiting an answer from us if there was a possibility for us to be a participant.
My understanding is that
Commissioner Kramer, if I just want to follow our
I'll wrap up,
way of
and you
doing
can
things.
give her a second bite if you want.
No, I was just going to answer his question. That's okay. I'll do it privately.
In the abstract, I'm in favor of this, but I do think we have some details to work out. It sounds like if we waited until next year to get clarity on those details, it would not delay the JCC from moving forward, so I think we should do that.
Okay, thank you. Other commissioners other committee members with questions or comments? Commissioner Churchill.
I appreciate that this motion is going contrary to the way that we usually conduct business. And if the motion, even if the motion fails tonight, I think that we are going to go forward with this project. The reason that I would favor it now is it gives new commissioners, gives the township, I think, some direction. Also, I think it gives impetus to the JCC. And a third component is I've always envisioned help, assistance with mainline health. JCC has a good program helping seniors, and this would just fit very well into what Mainline Health is doing for their seniors. And it puts some very good organizations on notice that we are making a tentative commitment, but we really haven't, it doesn't obligate us for any money. But I think that it gives greater strength for Alan to go and fundraise, and also to invite Mainline Health to participate. So that's why I favor the motion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gabbard?
I think Commissioner Churchill's right that this would give an indication that it's a tentative commitment, but we heard before this is the 27th priority on our list of priorities, and I don't think this board has made that tentative commitment, nor do I feel, as we've heard tonight, that we have enough information to make that tentative commitment. So I certainly don't feel comfortable making some sort of a commitment with monetary support or not with those facts. So I certainly can't support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Others with questions or comments? No, I want to make a couple comments. As we heard from President Sinai, we have a budget cycle, and it starts at the end of June with our capital budget workshops. And this has never been discussed in the capital budget workshop. So the next one's at the end of June. But even before that, we don't have any evidence of demand other than there were 3 people who spoke at our public meeting within the last year or so. And I'm not aware of any other indication of demand. I've been at this a while. Nobody's ever said to me we should have a township-run indoor pool, or township should make an indoor pool available. And then, fundamentally, there is a new pool, new-ish pool, just down the road at Lower Merion High School, paid for by the same people who pay our taxes. And pay school district taxes. And I understand that Commissioner Kramer has had conversations with school board members about this. But that's just one way to work with the school district. We have our management team. The school district has a new superintendent. What this community can use of school district facilities is fundamental, as it is in every community that has schools and has local government. And that's, to me, the starting point, and that should involve lots of members of this community who have their children use the schools, and our community members if they want the services that we can provide in this township. I think it starts there. So I think there's a lot that has to occur before this makes sense for further consideration. So with that, with any other committee members with questions or comments, the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, raise your hand. Are there any abstentions? Okay, Madam Secretary, that motion fails. 2 in favor, 11 against. Okay. Moving on to the third proposed budget amendment, also made by Commissioner Gilda Kramer. Commissioner Kramer, you're on the, you have the floor again.
Yes. Once again, I am not proposing this amendment to the budget to create a food security reserve fund of $50,000, because this matter can best be dealt with if the issue arises again next year. We should be prepared to provide immediate relief to our residents if we have another crisis of SNAP cutoff like we did this year, or rising food insecurity in the township. However, being prepared and providing help if necessary next year does not require including a $50,000 line item in the budget, which would reduce our fund balance and potentially further impact our AAA bond rating.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Kramer. Any questions or comments from committee members? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to proposed amendment number 4. This was an amendment proposed by the Finance Committee leadership consisting of Commissioner Whalen, Commissioner Courtney, and myself. So in order to get the discussion underway, I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the board to amend the proposed 2026 budget to increase the 2026 general fund non-departmental budget by $1,990 to allocate the funds to certain nonprofit organizations and to increase the 2026 general fund fire department budget by $5,000 and to allocate the funds to Narberth Ambulance in accordance with the Finance Committee leadership recommendations of funding levels per the attached chart. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Courtney. The Finance Committee leadership met with staff last week, and we reviewed the 800-page detailed document that staff prepared. That's how Adam inaugurated his new assistant controller, and providing tremendous detail to the many organizations that have gone through the application process seeking funding, nonprofit funding out of our budget. We were concerned that this was not a year to increase the amount that's in the budget. I'll remind you that the amount in the budget is $144,100, $144,010, which is the identical amount that was approved in last year's budget. We did end up recommending that increase by just under $2,000, but we went through every line item and we evaluated the value of the work of the nonprofit to the community, and their financials and their compliance with the requirements that we have. And we came up with this list. And it's the 2026 recommended column, which totals $146,000. And then for Narberth Ambulance, a year ago, the budget, the 2026 budget was lower than the expense we incurred and what we had approved a year ago. I believe I have that right, Adam. And we then recommend that we contribute Narberth Ambulance an amount that is equal to what they requested, and that requires a $5,000 increase to the budget. As is often the case, the three of us had different points of view, but we compromised, and I think that the three of us are supportive. I'm confident that the three of us are supportive of what's before you. So with that, do any committee members have any questions or comments? Commissioner Stevenson.
Thank you for recognizing me. This is why I stay home. I just want to say to the members of the Finance Committee, number one, for the work that you did into doing this. But secondly, for also recognize this whole Board of Commissioners and staff who was to support this type of work. And no matter what people want to go back and forth on how much should or shouldn't be for each group, I think it's important to recognize the commitment that this board has to recognize various organizations in our community to do the work that they're doing, and I am proud to be a part of the solutions of this work. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stevenson. Other committee members with questions or comments? Okay, President Sinai.
So I'm just playing off of a note that Vice President Kramer wrote to me, which is what we're getting here is like the output of years of toil and negotiation and work by the finance committee, and it showed up here in like a minute and a half, and everyone's like, yeah, fine, we're good with it. And I think that's just a tribute to the work that the three of you were doing on behalf of the board, because there have been previous years where we would spend an hour on this in this meeting, and you guys are doing that for us, and so thank you.
We appreciate that, thank you. Okay. Seeing no other questions or comments from committee members, and many thanks to Commissioners Whalen and Courtney, and we worked through it as has been said. And so the motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that amendment to the budget passes unanimously. All right, amendment number 5. This is a slightly different one in that it has been proposed by staff. So I'm going to call on Adam to explain.
Yeah, so this budget amendment comes before you in reflection of the recently passed leaf blower ordinance, and represents the first part of the township staff's purchases and capital investment in electric blowers to meet the scaled in and phased in seasonal and then permanent gas-powered leaf blower ban. We have staff obviously here from Parks and Rec and Parks to speak a little bit more in detail if you have any questions on operations and the peculiarities of the request. Of course, Parks, we do have some electric blowers in operation, mostly supplemental to our full operations. So the size of this just reflects the impact of mostly battery purchases to make those investments for that equipment that we'll need. I've been trying to not use the word leaf blower because, as you'll find, as our staff will say, they use these blowers not just to move leaves, but to dry courts before resurfacing, to dry grounds before painting on our streets, and various ways to move debris. So happy to answer any questions you have, and those that I can't, our crack staff is here to answer.
Okay, thank you, Adam. To get the discussion started, I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board to amend the proposed 2026 budget to increase the Public Works Department budget by $102,020 and the Parks and Recreation Department budget by $34,650 to allocate the funds to the purchase of new electric backpack and handheld leaf blowers, batteries, battery chargers, and charging management systems. Is there a second? Commissioner Courtney seconds the motion. Okay. Do committee members have questions or comments? Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you, Chairman Zella. So as some of my colleagues know, because everyone reads all their emails, I had a number of questions about these costs. But where I've come down to is that 2 weeks ago, this board made a decision to proceed with the ban on the gas-powered leaf blowers. And this is a necessary consequence of that decision, that the staff has to buy equipment. So I don't know that we have a choice, given the board's previous action to do this. Having said that, I wish that we were doing this in a year when we weren't, as others have said repeatedly, when we weren't already raising taxes. In addition to the $136,000, there will be some increased man hours or person hours involved for township employees to work with the electric blowers this next year. In addition, for residents who pay attention to these things, I think they should anticipate that the school board will have, the school district will also have increased costs of meeting their obligations to convert to electric. So having said all that, I do think that, given the board's decision 2 weeks ago, that we should approve this. But just note those sort of caveats that this is just a consequence of a decision. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Gabbard?
Thank you, Commissioner Zelov. First of all, Commissioner Grimes, I apologize. I didn't read your email because I blocked your emails about 2 years ago. So sorry about that. But I do have a question for Donna Heller. Donna, if you wouldn't mind. When we talked about the leaf blower ban, we talked not only about are electric leaf blowers sufficient to make up what, are they good enough, right, compared to gas-powered leaf blowers? We also talked about changing processes a little bit, where you don't need immaculately clean lawns, and in fact, it's better for the lawn sometimes to have some leaves there and leave leaves there. We heard just now, we also use leaf blowers to dry courts before repaving. I know on baseball fields, on tracks, you can't leave leaves there because that's dangerous. Are we looking at our processes overall to see where we may not need to use leaf blowers anymore, and how are we changing our processes and looking at that?
Absolutely. So, and that's kind of why it's a phased-in approach, and this is targeted for 2026 to get through the summer period of the ban. Those types of actions, we're not blowing leaves in the summer. We're drying courts before we prepare to resurface them. We use it in our construction processes, et cetera. For the leaf aspect of it, we're looking at mulching in place as much as possible, leaving leaves where we can. As you mentioned, athletic fields, courts, things of that nature, they do need to be removed. We try to keep them on site where possible and mulch them in place. We're also reducing our footprint as far as our mowing, trying to increase no-mow areas. So there's a lot of different moving parts to it. People, some people love it and some people don't. So yeah, we're definitely looking at all aspects and trying to evolve as the equipment evolves and make those purchases.
That's wonderful, and that's great to hear, and I think we should be setting that example, and I'm glad we didn't exclude ourselves from the legislation. I think it's important that we set an example, and in addition to doing it, wherever we can, I encourage you to communicate out and work with our communications folks to make sure that we are talking about what we're doing and how we're doing things better as we move forward, putting it out on LMTV, putting it out in newsletters, letting residents know, here's what the township's doing, and we should be setting that example for our residents. So thank you for everything you're doing, and really appreciate it, and think this is the right way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Zelov. And I just wanted to quickly address this in for the same reason that Commissioner Grimes didn't belabor it. I also don't want to belabor it. But just to put some things in context, and by the way, just to set the stage, I think we've all been talking about these things as seasonal bans, and the idea that they're like heavy seasons, they're light seasons. But what you quickly discover is that for public works, right, they're doing stuff in all seasons. And so the first year where you're banning, in winter and summer, it actually becomes material for them like right away, and which is why you see a higher upfront cost for them than you see for Parks and Rec. Now, having said that, these are upfront costs. These are not annualized costs. And when you do the math of the $130 some odd thousand, some of that is being spent on things to carry batteries, charging equipment, et cetera, that have a long lifetime. We heard from Adam that they expect the battery lifetime to be something like 4 years. You start realizing that on an annual basis, this is something like $25,000 a year, right? And the thing that's not accounted for here is any gasoline savings, any oil savings, any maintenance savings, all the stuff, let alone the environmental parts, benefits and the health benefits from doing this, because we just don't have estimates for it. So we left it out. But there's a reason that all the evidence says that this battery-powered equipment has a lower total cost of ownership. It's because the upfront cost is offset by lower running costs going forward. And for a landscaper that might not have a whole lot of capital, of course it's a very big deal. For a township where we have the ability to invest now to save money later for a net lower total cost of ownership, that makes sense to do. And, the calculation that goes in my head is if we think we are not going to save very much gas because we are not currently using very much gas with our blowers, we are also not going to use very much battery. Because energy is energy, and there's like a one-to-one correspondence between a tank of gas and however many batteries you need that correspond to a tank of gas. And so if we're not going through much gas, we're not going to go through very many battery cycles. We're going to have a very long lifetime for it. That's why the math works out the way it does for this to work out. And that's part of the reason why, 2 weeks ago, like I at least personally did feel like we needed to get into these details, right? I would have said this then. We were accused of not knowing what the numbers were. Like, I knew there were 20 public works crews. It was midnight. I was not going to respond. But the difference between $25,000 a year and if it's a 3-year battery lifetime, so it's $33,000 a year, was not something that I think the board's decision was going to turn on. And there are times where you just don't know the exact cost until you figure out operationally how it's going to be used. But you still know enough about it to be able to go ahead, and I think that's where they were. Anyway, that's my sense of the context of this. It would be nice if it didn't have a budget impact by all being lumped in 1 year, but on the other hand, we'll get benefits for the years after that. Thank you, Commissioner Zell.
Commissioner Byrne.
Thank you very much, and I don't want to go point counterpoint for sure. We've had the discussion, the board came out where it is, and as I've said repeatedly, if you're on the short side of that vote, then you hope that your colleagues got it, had better judgment than you do. But one of the issues was not just the acquisition cost, but the ability to charge the batteries, and whether we had the facility in order to do so with 2 levels, as I understood it. One was to provide the power, and the other was for the necessary fire suppression. I don't know, Mr. McElhenney, if you're able to address that at this point, not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot. You look like you needed to get up and stretch anyway. Take your time.
That's my line.
You know me, I waddle. So when this was being discussed by the board and considered by the board, we began our processes of looking at the engineering, what it's going to take. We had met with Donna and looked preliminarily at her area and so forth. We are still working on the engineering to be able to provide the power. At this time, we're not sure how we're going to do it yet, but there is going to be additional infrastructure and capital costs. We just don't know what they are yet and what that's going to entail. As I said, we initially started looking at the parks area of our facility, but with the adoption, we now have Public Works, my area, but that goes to all the sewer, the sewer department, the electrical department facilities. So there's numerous buildings that we're still evaluating and figuring out what we need to do. And we've posed questions to Mr. McCoy, about fire suppression and things. So we have to work out the internals. We're still doing that. And we'll bring forward, if we see a capital improvement that's needed, we'll bring it forward as needed.
All right, so 2 questions, if I may. One is for upcoming year, 2026, which is what we're looking at this amendment. Does this dollar value handle, what adjustment, the adjustments that you need to make?
The dollar amount that was submitted to the board by Parks and by Public Works and so forth, that's just the hardware. That is the leaf blowers, the batteries, the cases, those type of things. None of the infrastructure improvements that could possibly be needed.
All right, and would we need those in 2026 or?
What we'll do is we're like we do with other things. Sometimes we're scrambling, and we'll figure out what we need to do at this time, and then to make it work, and then what's it going to take for long term to be sustainable.
So And it may be a question that you're not capable of answering because we don't know until we're doing it. Are we looking at, in 2026, potential additional costs for those issues of, powering up or fire suppression? Or is that down the line 2027?
I can't answer that at this time. Like I said, we're still finding out about the chargers. Can we get a bank of chargers versus, that'll handle how many and what the amperage is. So there's a lot of variables that we still need information on, and we're working to do. I will say, I know with our Kegel complex, where the fleet side is, we are very pressed for any additional power to be able to provide anything. We're going to be, our engineering study that we started, we're looking at the balance of all the panels. Are there things that can be deleted? There's legwork that we need to do, and we're doing that in quick order. As to when and how much we may have different facilities handling some of the power demands for some of the other divisions. We'll see. We have to work it out. We may have, chargers for Shade Tree and Highway over at Refuse, and they have to go across the complex to pick up. We haven't figured that out yet.
All right, then one of the things we heard, and there was, I think we had 52 people who were here, and we've all had, 252,000 emails, was that from some of the landscapers, that they do charging in the field as opposed to back at home base. Is that something that we also need to consider?
We've had discussions with our fleet manager and all that, and about inverters in the truck, but we're being told it's 5 hours to charge a battery. The other, question was solar powered. The township's 26 square miles. To go from one end to the other, you're talking 15 minutes. You're not talking a lot of charge time. So there's going to be logistics that we need to look at, and try to see what works. So we're going to be, testing things and piloting things. But the fleet manager, Donna, myself, Panoni, we've sat down, we've looked at, can we put inverters, can we put solar panels on the trailers? We're putting together multiple ideas to see what they mean.
All right. So then the last question I'll ask is this figure that we're looking at light? Should we be looking at a higher number in order to have a cushion for all these potential costs that we don't know about?
Well, we had several discussions, with, the manager and Brandon and everybody, and we went and put together what we felt we were comfortable with, but we did put in, as Jesse liked to, because Jesse was the lead on this, was the caveat that if I run short, I want to be able to ask for a budget overrun if we find that our operations, that this doesn't support what we need.
All right,
So,
we'll get you an extension cord. All right, thank you very much.
Just
Our
to add,
manager would like to respond to
Sure,
that.
please.
Commissioner, what we're trying to do now is basically figure out where we're going to plug in the chargers. And ideally, we'd like to have the chargers in each division so that they could easily grab them. But we've got to analyze how much power we have in each one of the division's areas and figure out where we're going to plug them in. We don't even know yet how many batteries we have to charge on a daily basis, and most of the charging is going to occur at night when the rest of the facility isn't using much electricity to start with. So we're not looking to come back with any kind of major capital project. We know we need some capital projects here and at Kegel in order to put more chargers in for EVs, but not for these handheld or backpack blowers. So we won't be coming back to you with a need for a capital project on top of this. We need to buy these and learn how to use them and learn how much we use them, and then learn how many batteries do we even need to charge a night.
and with that, we have to, balance panels and figure out what circuits can be utilized and that kind of stuff.
Right,
So-
and I reckon, look, and I won't belabor it at all, it's just saying, all right, there's an element of unknown, and if we're going to do this, make sure that we have the adequate funding so that as we go out of the gate, then all of a sudden we're not turning around and saying, oops, we're short X amount of dollars.
There was a lot of work put in by numerous people to try to get what's our base, And as the manager said, we have the, we're going to have to learn what kind of performance we get, what, everything. There's a learning curve, and we'll work our way through it.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, Commissioner Zella. And I should say thank you to our township manager, because you brought up what I was going to bring up, which is that the electrical grid improvements are all sort of going to come with electrification of the fleet and not from this. So this will be, that project, if I am still a sustainability committee chair next year, will be on our priority workshop list, unless I'm overruled by my colleagues, which I doubt. And then finally, I just want to say thank you to our Public Works and Parks and Rec staff for reacting so quickly to this. We passed an ordinance 2 weeks ago, and here we are at our budget hearing, and we have the expenses we need to adhere to that ordinance in 2026. As Commissioner Gavin said, I think it's great that we are eating our own dog food. That's what we call it in tech land. And so, thank you for bringing this forward. And I just want to point out that at $136,000, that's 0.4% tax increase. Thanks.
Okay, other commissioners, I just would observe we learn new terms every day. Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you very much. Quick question. Brandon is the guru for getting grants. I know that this is very new, and I didn't know, on the horizon, do you think that we may be qualify for some grants from someone? No one's heard
I
it.
won't say no, but I won't give a definitive yes either. How about
Yeah,
that?
well, because
We'll look.
we're new, and
I mean, we are the first in Pennsylvania, so.
yes.
We'll look. We are always on the search to offset our cost. So we'll just add this to the list of things to keep on our radar as we're,
Yep, good.
looking for the lay of the land.
You never have to be reminded of that, but the public may be aware.
Yep, we just got a grant announcement earlier today, and granted, we were answering budget questions, but I have it pinged for tomorrow to look at and see how we can offset some of our
Great. Thank you.
CIP costs
Okay,
next year.
thanks. Other commissioners, other committee members with questions or comments? Okay, I will make just a few. I want to thank Commissioner Grimes, because today and yesterday, what not everybody sees is this is a particularly busy time with a lot of information being requested of staff and staff responding. It all had to get done before this meeting started tonight, and Commissioner Grimes had a lot of very good questions about this topic and the equipment, and the question about are added staff work hours needed, and the answer was no from Brandon. So Donna, I hope you saw that commitment was made, and I'm delighted to see that. And we not only did we pass a seasonal ban, but I think if we had just voted on a seasonal ban, I bet, my guess is it would have been everyone in support of that. And so this equipment's needed for the seasonal ban, and that's something that some of us have learned in the course of these 2 weeks. And so I support this, and it's time for a vote. All those in favor of the motion that has been made and seconded, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? That one passes unanimously, Madam Secretary. Okay, we are now at the point in the Finance Committee meeting, still on Agenda Item 4. If there are any committee members who would like to make additional motions to amend the budget, we can do so now. We can do so in 2 weeks. We can do them tonight and in 2 weeks. Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoff. I'm going to attempt to do something out of character tonight, which is actually reduce the tax increase. And I will explain why. I will explain why in a conversation about our financial policy in 2 weeks. Because tonight I just want to focus on the amendment I'm trying to do. And on its surface, this amendment will seem like a reduction in the headcount for the Lower Merion Police Department, but it really is not. That is a conversation that I think we should save for next year as to what the proper amount of sworn police officers is for Lower Merion, given the levels that we have had historically and the levels that we have now. This is really going to be 2 amendments. The first one is mostly a bookkeeping adjustment that, if that passes, will reduce our expenses in such a way that I will then propose another amendment that will make a commensurate reduction in the tax increase. And so there was a long thread of emails over the past couple of weeks that everybody was added to about, I don't know, 6 hours ago. So I'm going to ask some questions that will repeat some of the numbers in that email in the hope that it'll make things clearer. And so most of this is just going to be confirmation that I have my numbers right. So right now, is it correct to say we have 136 budgeted heads for the Lower Merion Police Department? And then we have this line item for budgetary savings through expected vacancy rate, and that there are 8 Lower Merion police officers included in that line item. So effectively, we have budgeted for 128. Is that right?
In a way.
In a way. Only in a way.
Okay.
Again, the vacancy rate that we budget is not position by position. Sure. It's not targeted by department. It's an overall vacancy rate that is anticipated. It's a reduction, a negative expenditure we book that accounts for the time we are missing employees, whether they're vacancies that were created by new retirements, by resignations, terminations, the time it takes to go through a civil service process when it applies to police hiring, and the time it takes to go through a hiring process if it's a non-police position, which can also be lengthy at times. So it's an expectation of how much it will equal over the course of a year to miss having people during those times.
So then let me restate. Our expectation is that over the course of the year, we will have 128, the cost of 128 full-time employees in the police department.
You could phrase it as the cost of.
Great.
Yes.
Great. And then right now, it's my understanding we have 126 employed, but 7 of those are under conditional employment. 6 are beginning training in January, and 1 of those has deferred to mid-year. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
Awesome. So budget right now says 128. We have 126, but 7 of those are conditional. Next number, this past year, 2025, we had 121 with averaging 118 full-time employed. Is that correct? Did I read that part right in my email?
We were at 118, and it's gone up since we've done our recruitment process starting the spring of this year.
Great. So the way that, Adam, I think I'm quoting you correctly, is that yes, we are at 121, but on average, we averaged 118 for the year.
Yes, and as Ernie alluded to, we also, it's an overall picture of the staffing. So we track per payroll how many uniformed full-time staff we have and how many non-uniform. So just to recap again, we have budgeted authorization for 136 uniformed officers, including police management, and 290 non-uniform full-time positions across all other departments, as well as the civilian staff and police. This year, we've averaged about 18 vacancies on a payroll basis throughout the year, and about 15 vacancies non-uniform throughout the year.
All right, great. And so one more numbers question, and this is the number that I am using as a rough estimate for the annual full-time compensation, benefits, everything is around $165,000 annually per officer, or 0.5% of a tax increase. Does that sound right?
Thereabouts, yes.
Roughly. Okay. So what I mean to say then is every head in the Lower Merion Police Department is 0.5% tax increase. So what I am proposing is that we change our budgetary savings to go from 128 to 125. And the reason for that is I believe it to be optimistic that we will stay at 128 for the year. And my recollection in the almost 7 years I've been on this board is that this is the first time we've ever been over 125 in that time period. I don't know if anybody actually has that number.
We did the research on it. I did it this week as a result of your emails. The last time the police department was at 136 officers was in January of 2020.
Okay.
And that was right before we entered into the pandemic, and then after that, the George Floyd incident. And then after that, typically throughout all of law enforcement, it became difficult to get new recruits.
Gotcha. Okay. So I was wrong. In my first year, we were above 125. So that's where I'm getting this 125 number from. And so again, this isn't a reduction in headcount. It's not a reduction in police budget. It is an alteration to our estimate of what the vacancy rate will be this year and that I want us to, how do I phrase this? I want us to add the equivalent of 3 heads in the Lower Merion Police Department to that negative expense. Meaning our current budgeted vacancy rate is estimating 128. I want to set it to estimate 125. And then the follow-up to that will then be a reduction of the tax increase from 9.5% to 8%. So I'll make this in 2 motions. The first amendment, if it passes, I'll make the second. If it doesn't pass, I'll stop talking. All right. So I move that we increase the vacancy rate budget savings to 7.25%. That is the equivalent of all that math I just said.
Second by Commissioner Zello. So before we go to public comment, I want to ask our township manager, the motion that's been made and seconded is the vacancy rate, which is an assumption made in the budget. And it applies to all township staff.
It is. The vacancy rate applies across all township positions. And it is not calculated or targeted toward any particular department or bodies. It's an anticipation, as I said, across the entire organization, how much time we will be missing from various positions being unfilled for various reasons throughout the year. So it really isn't calculated by 128 officers, 125 officers. The budget has 136 officers. And the budget has a number for the non-uniformed personnel. And across all those, we assume a vacancy rate. I think the motion's appropriate and reasonable to say we anticipate a 7.25% vacancy rate as opposed to the budget as drafted has a 6.25% vacancy rate. And indeed, I believe that saves the amount of money that you hope to save here in order to proceed with your second motion.
May I make one more statement?
Yes.
And that is, this is in no way a knock on the Lower Merion Police Department. Even with our 121 employed, 118 average this year, I will note that in our budget, we received some crime statistics. The number of reported crimes is trending downward year over year, and the number of clearances has trended upward year over year, even with the department not being at full force as budgeted.
If I may address some of that.
Yes, yes, Superintendent.
So just for the board's recollection, when I went through the hiring process here, and when I came on as your police superintendent, one of the #1 goals was reinforcing our community-oriented policing, and that's part of this, is having the officers to do that and build that program out. Our community interaction is huge. We just graduated 12 people on Monday evening from another one of our citizens police academies, and that was the theme all evening long when we had the graduation ceremony, that they would like to see more and more community outreach from the police department, and I told them we are working on that. But we need people to be able to do that.
Thank you, Superintendent. I'm going to call on President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Zell. So so it's just a couple of things. The first, I want to start with the police part, right? So we have a budgeted contingency of 136 officers, right? That is the board's policy. That continues to be our policy. We budget for that policy. And I don't think that policy is up for debate tonight. I'm not going to debate this policy at 8:30 on December 3rd, right? That is what we're looking to do, and that's what we're going to continue to look to do. I think Superintendent Block has stated some of the reasons, which is there's a lot of services that we like from our police department that we are unable to accomplish with our current staffing. But if this board disagrees with me, that's a matter to discuss at a different time, right? So what are we going to do with the budget this evening? It's a discussion of, okay, when Adam has put together a forecast of what the vacancy is going to be across the population of the staff, like, did he err on the side of that vacancy being too small, or maybe it's going to be bigger, right? Because in our goal of getting to a full complement of officers, it can take longer than we expect, right? It could be that in other parts of the township, other staff areas, it just takes longer to fill positions. We've experienced that this year, right? There are reasons that this number might be uncertain, right? That has nothing to do with the targeted employment, because that is not up for an issue tonight, because we are not making amendments or changes to that policy. So that's a if I can, so I want to make that point about staffing. Clearly, is this a time when I should talk about that particular 6.25 versus 7.25 number?
No, because we're first going to go to public comment.
Then I'll reserve that for later.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so that's, so members of the public in the room who have any questions or comments on the motion that's been made?
Personally say, my name is John Chavez, I'm the president of the Fraternal Order of Police. I represent the 136 active members, or 125. I also represent the retired members of the police department. We've been here for 4 years. I've been the president of this lodge. For the past 3 years, I've been promising my officers that help is on the way. They've been working tirelessly, sometimes 20 calls a shift. Sometimes we're going out on people, just 7 officers on a shift, just 7. 7 for 26 square miles, covering over 63,000 people, and covering City Avenue all the way up to on a large geographical area. If you go forward with this, my phone right now, for my officers, completely just blew up. They find this to be demoralizing, upsetting, and not supportive of our police department. And they completely see it that way. So I urge every commissioner here to vote against this amendment, to keep our contingent at 136, and that we go to full staffing. We can only do more with more and less with less. We can't give any more police services with less police officers. That is 100% thing. We enjoy working here in this township. We enjoy working for each and every one of you and each and every one of our citizens. But we cannot do more with less. We can only do less with less. And I do enjoy working here. I enjoy having our conversations that we have with this. Our FOP has done numerous things with outreach for the entire police department. Even just this time, we partnered with Superintendent Block. We delivered 30 turkey meals throughout the township. We're here, and we are invested. We're indebted to this township, and we are very happy to work here. But I am telling you now, if you vote for this amendment, it will hurt our morale, it will hurt our membership, and it will hurt every one of our police officers, as well as it will affect the public safety of this township. Thank you.
Other members of the public who wish to come forward who are in the room this evening? Jody, are there any members of the public on Zoom who wish to speak on this?
No one has their.
Okay, so now we'll go to committee member questions and comments on the motion. The motion is, as I understand it, is to increase the assumed vacancy rate across all township staff from 6.25% to 7.25%. Am I correct, Commissioner Courtney?
Yes.
Okay. That assumption in the budget is unrelated to specific positions, and that has been confirmed by our manager. And the assumption is lower than we've had in our recent experience. Adam, is that correct?
This year, it's around 7.5%. So the 6.25% in the budget was a very laborious analysis of where we're trending with turnover, where the recruitment process is in police. Although it's overall, of course, because of the difference in turnover in the last few years between police and non-uniform, we do look at those trends separately and then aggregate them in the total. So it was, I've got to know a lot of staff over in the police department constantly checking in on the recruitment numbers, even the average age to consider health care, because older folks tend to have family versus single. So, I bring a 6.5 not on a dartboard, but, more so with a marksman-like approach.
Adam, do you also speak with HR about all township openings?
Yes.
Okay. So there are openings at all times for the budgeted township staff, regardless of what department it is, correct?
Yes, and certainly, as we mentioned in the emails, vacancy is a duration, whereas turnover is a single action, right? So part of the reason we have vacancy on the non-uniform side, particularly over time, is because if we have a higher ranking position that becomes vacant, we do a lot of internal promotion. So that just shuffles the deck, one vacancy becomes another as that promotion occurs. And that's factored into our analysis.
Thank you. There are many assumptions in the budget. They're primarily on the revenue side. This is one of the assumptions that you and Ernie and the team putting the budget together make on the expense side, right? Because expenses are very predictable, whereas revenue is not. You made an assumption about business privilege tax revenue in 2026, correct?
Correct.
And you made an assumption about real estate transfer tax.
Correct.
And you made an assumption about permit revenue that comes from building permits, right? So we, as a board, can change assumptions in the budget if we choose to do so, and we have to be reasonable, because if we're not, we'll hear from our manager about that. But we did hear from our manager today in the flurry of emails, and I know it was tough for all of us to keep up, that the proposal to increase the vacancy rate is reasonable. Is that correct, Ernie?
That's correct.
Okay. So this, in my view, and the reason I seconded the motion, is not about police staffing. This is about what's the reasonable vacancy rate that is assumed for the budget. And it's, if the motion passes, it would be changing what the staff has used in determining, changing their assumption for vacancy rate. And we have had a number of staff vacancies over the years, and we have recently increased, a year ago, we increased the workforce in the HR department to try and work through some of that, but nevertheless, this seems like a reasonable increase in the vacancy rate to me, based on our recent history and based on confirmation from our manager that is reasonable for us to consider doing this. So, do other committee members have questions and comments? Commissioner Grimes, I think you had your hand up first.
Thank you. So, question, and forgive me if this is an obvious one, but suppose there's a reason that we're having this conversation, which I guess will be in the next motion, related to the tax increase. But suppose we raise the vacancy rate, and then current trends in the economy seem to be that unemployment is ticking up and may make public sector employment more attractive than it's been in recent years. Plus, I think, as we've all know, because we see the results, our police department is doing a very effective job of attracting new officers, and that could, I'm going to guess that sort of steamrolls as we have more of a reputation as a great place to work. So suppose we overhire and the vacant, not overhire, excuse me, we do better than we're anticipating and the vacancy rate a year from now is 5%. What is the impact, if any, when we get, in terms of budgeting and things like that? Because then we're sort of then we may have not raised taxes to account for those extra hires, right?
Well, Commissioner,
please.
If we miss the mark and we do better in getting employees than we thought, and therefore the vacancy rate is not as high as 7.25%, we will, if it is not offset by other overperformance in the budget, we would then draw down a little more from fund balance than we had anticipated. But it may be offset by other factors in the budget, since, as you know, we typically overperform the budget every year. So it doesn't take a whole lot of overperformance on the revenue side, and perhaps we're very accurate on the expenditure side normally, but overperformance a little bit here and a little bit there could easily offset the miss on the vacancy rate.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Epstein.
I just want this stated really succinctly. However we vote on this motion, will that impact police recruitment or filling those positions?
No.
There, thank you.
Commissioner Whalen.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoll. Thank you for the clarification. I think I'd like to start with the point from President Sinai and say, I completely agree. I'm not interested, nor do I think it's appropriate for us to debate, staffing numbers or levels here tonight. I don't want to give that impression to anybody. I'm not willing to entertain it. I don't think any of us are. And that nothing we're doing should be taken construed that way. Second, we talk about our staff all the time, some of us publicly, some of us behind the scenes. We hire the best staff because we then have experts to do things, as Commissioner Zoloff was sort of laying out for us, to make all of these assumptions for us. I am not an expert in any of these things. I rely on staff, and Adam, you're doing an amazing job kind of filling this in for me. And it makes me very uncomfortable, the idea of second guessing the assumptions that, to put it poorly, my retained expert in like a legal sense has made all these assumptions through extensive efforts, years of experience, knowledge and capability. And so I find this very unsettling that we're kind of walking through this exercise at all. And I think in essence, we could look at any one of your assumptions, Adam. I'm sure you could point out dozens that you went through, and we could just say, hey, how about we just assume it's a point this way or a point that way, and all the numbers look better. But I think Commissioner Zoloff, you were pointing it out well. If we take this cohesively, there are a lot of assumptions throughout this whole thing, and to pinpoint one and say we're going to move the needle this way or that way, you really can't look at it that way. And I would rather applaud Adam for all the work that you've done, the extensive effort here, applaud the police. Again, I don't want the police to think that we're somehow debating numbers here. I'm not entertaining that tonight. And so I can't support this, but I just wanted to say that it actually makes me very uncomfortable that we've even kind of gone down this path.
Okay.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gilda.
Adam, I have a question. You said before that coming to the 6.25% number was a laborious analysis that included analysis of, among other things, turnover and recruitment, things like that. Is there anything that has happened that changes your assessment about what is the correct number? Is there any new information that would change that to make it 7.25% instead of 6.25%?
No, and also it's in the context, of course, in the original budget presentation, it's also tied in the fact that, we re-looked at how we did the benefits budgeting to make sure we're capturing true cost before vacancies. So that was another reason why, to that projection. Of course, we missed it. We underestimated vacancies this year, but I had a lot less time under my wing to come up with that number last year. That's the main driver of this year's expense performance compared to budget, is really all down to that vacancy number.
Then I would like to make two comments. I think that changing the assumption may very well encourage us to slow walk filling positions so that we don't run a bigger deficit. And I think that that's not in the interests of this community. If we decide that we need certain staffing, we should try to fill those positions expeditiously, and we shouldn't have a built-in incentive to slow walk it. And my second comment is that I agree 100% with Commissioner Whalen. I am exceedingly uncomfortable at the idea of massaging this number to get to a predetermined goal. And I absolutely cannot support this.
President Stein.
Thanks, Commissioner Gall. So I just want to follow up with a quick question and then have some thoughts on this. But I guess it's for Manager McNeely. So on one hand, we have Adam's laborious analysis, and on the other hand, we have your characterization that 7.25 would be reasonable. Yeah, I'm just wondering, when you say reasonable, what do you mean by reasonable? I think I know where it's coming from. I just want to confirm.
Based on prior experience, based on the number of vacancies we have, based on the number of days and weeks and months it takes to hire some positions, it's not an unreasonable change to the assumption. And while Adam did a laborious analysis, budgeting is not a science. We try and make it as much of a science as we can, but it's an art.
Okay.
We don't have a crystal ball, and no one can sit here today and tell me how many people will be terminated, resign, retire, how long, how many months it will take to fill various positions. It's just not that scientific. We don't have that crystal ball.
Okay. So if I could rephrase that, can I characterize what you said as basically both 6.25 and 7.25 are within the range of experience, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's not like, okay. So Adam did a bunch of work to come up with 6.25, but there's pluses and minuses around that every year, so you could end up with 7.25. It wouldn't be crazy to assume that.
Right.
Okay. So thank you. So that helps a lot. I think so really have two comments. And I think one of these is a distinction between a guess and a best guess, right? I think both 6.25 and 7.25 fall within the realm of acceptable guesses. I think Adam has come up with his best guess, and he's done a lot of work to come up with his best guess. We have to pick a point, right? We have to pick one, and picking the best guess strikes me as the way to go. But to the point of there are a lot of assumptions here. Reasonable people can disagree about what the appropriate guess would be, right? And that's why it's appropriate for us to look at this. Though I do share Commissioner Whalen's view, which is that if you pick apart one assumption, you can go find another assumption and pick it apart the other way, and those two would offset. And so cherry picking assumptions to pick on is kind of unfair, right? But the second is I think this is going to end up being a red herring in the discussion, which is that there's a lot of uncertainty about what's going to come in, how these things are going to come in. And here we're focusing on this one element of expenses, which is just swamped by our uncertainty about what the revenues are going to be, right? And all expenses are negative revenues, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty that's going to go on here. And we are going to be, put another way, no matter what number we pick here, at the end of the day, all that's going to matter is how much we spend, because at some point we're going to have to cover that with revenues. And nothing we're discussing about 6.25 versus 7.25 affects our spending, right? It's all just the accounting, it's the budgeting, it's the forecast. And so, we can debate this a lot, but at the end of the day, it's going to be, the number's going to be what's going to be, And so if we assume a smaller vacancy, then we're going to just more likely run a larger deficit. Full stop, right? And then we have to fund that because you can't continue deficits forever. So anyway, thank you, Commissioner Zoll.
Commissioner Vice President Grimm.
Thank you. I would love to see a lower tax increase than our staff has very wisely proposed. We all would love for it to be lower than what it looks like it might need to be. And so I was initially interested in a discussion about how we could lower that and looking at the vacancy savings that as one of the ways that we could lower this a bit. But now I can't support this because we can't. This has now been connected to the idea that we would be reducing police staffing, and that just cannot stand. Police staffing is hugely important, and it's very serious business, and it has serious implications for public safety, for officer safety, for officer morale. And it's unfortunate that this conversation has become conflated with such a discussion, but for that reason, I can't support this. And I will say that, if the township ever wants to talk about police staffing numbers, it's going to need to do so in a very thoughtful way, with that being identified by the board as a priority for consideration, with the full participation of the superintendent and his recommendations for what is safe for everyone involved, and not in such a venue as this. So it's unfortunate that these two items got connected, but that's where I stand, and so I won't support this. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Rossman.
First, I'd like to thank you, Adam, and Ernie, and Brandon. Excuse me, Anthony.
I'm sorry.
Okay, let me just finish, and then we're going to recognize you. I promise. And you should have been first, but that's okay. Thank you for all the work you've done this week. I think you earned your yearly salary the last 3 or 4 days with all the emails coming back and forth. Is it my understanding, is it correct that we've always budgeted for a full complement of police? And we've always had some revenue left over, or some money left over in that budget item?
We've always, police or not police, we budget the full cost of every position within their respective departments. And then a vacancy assumption is built into the budget, and that dates back long ago. I think the 900,000 was the number in 2011, because I just pulled the last time we had a tax increase before last year, just to see what it was. It was done back then. So budget the full amount positions in their departments and then make assumptions about vacancies.
Thank you. So it goes back many, many years that way. And sometimes we have to look at that little budget item and maybe help other areas. But I think this is a sort of a numbers game. I respect the amendment, Commissioner Courtney, but I don't approve of it personally. This gives an appearance to our staff that they're not number one in our minds and our hearts and how we respect them. And I think by not giving that appearance, it turns the tables. We have a terrific organization here. And I think if we're going to pick and choose, we should pick and choose from other areas and not our police force. It's going to be misinterpreted, or our staff. It's going to be misinterpreted. And the rumors that start will be rumors based not on the truth, as you've explained to us in our emails, and we've been studying now for literally days, probably 22-hour days, because that's how much we have to allot to read all this. I think it's wrong to bark up this tree. I think it's wrong to cut back, and wrong to give the impression to our treasured people that we are possibly cutting back from their ability to run their departments.
Thank you. Commissioner Stevenson.
Thank you for the recognition. Chair. So I'm going to go from two angles here. The first is I have the utmost empathy for our director of HR. I live that life every day, but I think that we have to recognize when we talk about vacancies that we're in a different age of hiring, where there is not people knocking down doors anymore when there's a job opening. And then when they do apply, you have to vet, you may get 1/10 of those folks who are eligible, or then another 1/10 who are qualified. And so I think it's important to keep in mind that there is, as it was said earlier, there is that need for that urgency because you're looking for the best. And in order to look for the best, you got to constantly be at the grind for it. So that is an important part, and the folks who are or the staff who are constantly looking for those folks, it is a tedious thing. The second one is about those vacancies and why we're where we are with having the increased number of folks, and looking at the police. If it was up to me, I wish I was up here saying that we could cut police in half. But let me tell you why. Because I wish we wouldn't be in a position where that we have allowed this development that in our township where there's a need. When we hired our police chief, superintendent, one of the things that we made a commitment is to do the fill rate. And we can't take away the rate that we need the police, we need our public works, we need these other folks here because our population continues to grow because we've continuously allowed this overdevelopment. And so by allowing this development, then we can't cut back on services because those folks need services. So my solution is, let's stop developing. Then we wouldn't have this need. But until then, we must follow the need, and the need is to follow the recommendations of the police, follow the recommendations of our HR and our management to meet those needs where we are right now. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Bernheim.
And I thought you wanted a high-rise in Gladwin.
I do.
So seriously, I didn't view Commissioner Courtney's recommendation to be stating at all that we were going to change in any of the targets that we have for hiring in any staff whatsoever, be it police or otherwise. And it's not just that any one individual on this board is interested in starting a debate on December 3rd. It's that if the board had that thought process, it would have been brought forth long ago. That's not an issue that's before us of changing the number of police. And I've never seen in the 15-plus years that I've been on this board where there has been somebody slow walking something because we have this recognition that we're not going to have these vacancies filled. If there is qualified individuals that come forth, then they get hired. And that's why we have those positions there in the first place. It's the reality of, all right, how many are we really going to fill? And then what are we doing when we're going forward with the budget? And as noted repeatedly here, there are a number of assumptions that are made, and for transfer tax. We don't know how many properties will sell. We don't know what price they will sell for, how many will be residential, how many will be commercial. And I use that as an example because the last time we did this, I used that same point of saying that I thought that our transfer taxes would be better than what our projections were, in that from the data that I was receiving and seeing come through with the marketplace. We're projecting that to even be better the next year. So when we make projections, when we're provided these projections from our staff, our job is to kick the tires. We did that most recently with the leaf blowers. The recommendation which came to us was wait 2 years and then see what the technology and the costs were. And the will of this board was no. We were going to make a decision about a full ban, with the ordinance that was passed. because information that people received drove them to do that. So it's not inappropriate to take a look at any one aspect or all aspects. In fact, that's what our responsibility is. So when I listened to what Commissioner Courtney was proposing, he was saying, look, this reality is that we're probably going to have a different rate of vacancies than we were projecting, and as a result of that, that's going to change bottom line dollars, which may find a mechanism to make certain people comfortable with a lower tax increase than 9.5%. There could be other points that he'd be looking at, but this was one that he was bringing up. I don't know how to emphasize, and I hope you bring it back to every single one of those officers. We are not, with a capital N-O-T, we are not suggesting that we change the number of police officers at all. We don't want to do that. And as much as you can tell them, that is the will of the board, and we will, if need be, fulfill all 136, and in whatever fashion we have to, whether this passes or not. Thank you.
Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, Commissioner Zeloff. I'm probably going to poke the bear here a little bit, but I want to explain why I'm talking about the police department tonight. And it is really not about changing headcount this evening. This amendment is not that at all. It is about seeing where we are in the error bars of this estimation that our CFO has made and using the police department as a way of getting concrete translation of the numbers from the percentage vacancy rate to the salary of an officer to the percentage of tax increase. And why did I choose the police department? What is percentage of the township budget is the police department?
39%.
39%. When you are looking at your budget and a way to reduce expenses, does it not make sense to start with the biggest pieces of the pie? Okay. Let me just poke the bear. Officer Shevitz, Sergeant, thank you. Sergeant Shevitz, first I want to thank you for the work you've done with the FOP and Superintendent Block. The improvement of the relationship between the officers and the leadership of the Lower Merion Police Department is incredibly apparent. And the improvement of the relationship with this board is apparent. I don't want to damage that, but I want to say that your statement that we can't do more with less is not borne out by the crime statistics that are in our budget. I'm looking at them right now. With somewhere between 118 and 121 officers this year, violent crimes are down, property crimes are down, clearances are up, right? Traffic crashes are down, DUI arrests are down, property damage crashes, personal injury crashes. All of the stats that we have been provided are moving in a positive direction for this township. Commissioner Rothman, I love the vehemence with which you talk about how great our staff is, because I agree with you. But in this instance, I think what should be number one in the hearts and minds of this board are our neighbors, the residents of this township who elected us. And I don't think they're expecting a 9.5% tax increase. And I don't think we're doing our job if we're not even attempting to find a way to make that hit smaller. Think about it. We've done 15 years with zeros and then a 6.5 and now a 9.5, right? This is not what our constituents are expecting, right? And so at the very least, we need to make an effort, right? Nothing that has happened this evening has done anything but increase the expenses in the budget except for this amendment. I cannot recall a time on this board when we have, and I'm guilty here, I've added a lot of expenses to the budget, but I cannot recall a time that we have ever reduced an expense other than through a savings that we have gained through a project like, let's say, switching over to LED lights, right? Investments in capital infrastructure over the long term reduce expenses, but in terms of amendments to operating expense, this board has never passed an amendment that reduced operating expense. Now this one is fake. It doesn't actually reduce operating expense. It's moving a number, but it is, at this late date in the year, the best I could come up with without creating even more controversy than I already have. I have also, only on 2 occasions, seen this board act to increase revenue through property tax, and this is the second one. The first time, 2 years ago, we almost did it, but we balked. We cannot say that we are being good stewards of our constituents' money without having difficult conversations like this. This is not meant to be disrespectful to the police. I'm sorry if this is going to impact morale. I'm picking on your department because it's a big chunk of our budget. And because you have been successful, you have done tremendous work with less than your full staffing complement. That is how I ended up on the police department this evening. The method by which I am going about these amendments is the one that was recommended to me by people who are much better at finances than I am, but it is an attempt to move a needle that seems to not want to budge this year. So getting the sense of the room, think I'm going to fail, but I would encourage you to reconsider in this moment that this is the one vote thus far this evening, maybe there are others to come, that actually attempts to reduce the tax that we are going to put on our friends and neighbors in 2 weeks. Thank you, Commissioner Zella.
Thank you, Commissioner Courtney. I believe every commissioner has spoken on this.
Just would like to make.
Didn't you speak on this, Commissioner Churchill?
Wish I had.
Okay, Commissioner Churchill.
My first year as commissioner, we voted for about 11.5% tax increase. So this is not new territory for me. I feel that this amendment is more like a Trojan horse. You don't spend first 15 minutes saying, analyzing the police and then saying, well, it's not about the police. Well, it is. And I would just say that for many years, we have had a very difficult time attracting police officers, and with our new superintendent, we're finally off our knees that seems to be a very healthy place to become a police officer, and to try to limit that, I cannot support that. So I would I would also say that this amendment reminds me of a couple of years ago when the board decided to right-size the police department. And I don't think it hasn't been until Superintendent Block came that we have recovered from that. So I just look upon this as just, a new variance of an old ploy that did not work. So thank you very much.
I'm going to give another opportunity to our township manager.
One more attempt to clarify. Whether you choose to make an assumption of a vacancy rate of 6.25% or 7.25%, it does not affect the number of positions in the police department, in the public works department, in any other department that we would go ahead and fill. We would never slow walk hiring unless the board told us to. And if we even thought it was merited because of some sort of emergency, we'd come to you with that authorization. Secondly, with respect to police, there's only two things that control the hiring of police. And it's not the manager, it's this board right here, and the time it takes to recruit police officers and go through the civil service test process. So you are the final arbiter of the pace of hiring police officers, as you're allowed to do via the civil service process. And we know that takes time. We know we've almost already exhausted the current list that we have. You give an authorization for a new test in March. That may take till summertime at some point before we have a valid list to hire from. But nothing you do with respect to deciding whether you want to assume a 6.25 or 7.25% vacancy rate affects the pace or the decision of the number of positions that are authorized. All of the positions are fully funded in the budget. Be glad to answer any questions.
No questions? Everybody's made a comment. The motion has been made and seconded to increase the vacancy rate from 6.25 as assumed in the budget to 7.25. So everybody understands what the motion is. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Madam Secretary, the motion fails 9-4.
No, I was in favor.
I didn't catch that. So it is 4 in favor, 9 opposed, and it fails.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Yep. Okay. With that, are there any other members of the committee who wish to make motions to amend either the operating or capital budget this evening? Recognizing that we can also do so in 2 weeks. Okay, seeing none, we will move to the final 2 items in the Finance Committee budget. They are very closely related, and is for the Finance Committee to consider a recommendation with regard to non-union employee wage increases. So, I will move. Before I move, I'm going to point out that the motion that is in our agenda does not have a percentage increase in it. That is entirely our decision. There's no recommendation that has been made on this. So, but for purposes of a discussion, I'm going to move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of non-union wage increases of 3.5% for all non-uniform management and non-union employees to be incorporated into the adopted 2026 budget. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Grimes. Making sure I follow procedure. I will now call on Adam for an explanation. Adam, the first question is, before you explain, and you're probably going to say this, is that 3.5% included in the budget?
It is.
Okay. Tell us more.
So this is an annual resolution or action taken by the board to set the pay scale for the coming year, because for non-union, of course, there's no contractual obligation in the prior year until board take action. So every 0.5% change from that 3.5 is roughly $34,000 for this group of non-union employees.
Thank you. Do committee members have questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Churchill.
If it's already in the budget, why is this an amendment?
Ernie?
It has to be approved by the board in order to be legally paid in 2026. It's already assumed in the budget. If you chose to not do it or change it to a different percentage, we would need to amend the budget further.
But it can be amended.
Yeah,
And I would use Commissioner Zeloff's favorite phrase, up to 3.5%.
Oh, no.
I don't think we can do that in this case.
Okay. Yeah, just trying to give you credit.
Well, I'll take all credit in my direction, but I don't think we can do it in that case.
That would not work.
No, it would not. Other committee members with questions or comments? This is consistent with our past practice, is consistent with our 2 collective bargaining agreements, and is well-deserved. All those in favor, raise your hand. Oh, excuse me. Thank you, Jody. I'm doing my best. Public comment from members of the public. I see 3 in the room with us this evening at this point. Jody, are any members of the public online who wish to comment?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. The motion has been made and seconded. All in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that motion passes unanimously. So that prior agenda item did not include police management, and that is the subject of the final item on tonight's agenda. And so I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of wage increases of 3.5% for all police management employees to be incorporated into the adopted 2026 budget. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Bernheim. Adam, can you tell us more?
This is the same approval of the increase assumed in the 2026 budget for the 8 police management employees.
Thank you. Do members of the public in the room have any questions or comments? Do any members of the public on Zoom have questions or comments? Do committee members have any questions or comments? Doing this would be consistent with what we just did. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that 6th and final item carries unanimously. President Sinai, at 9:14, that concludes the Finance Committee for this evening.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Zillow. And that concludes our public business for this evening. My colleagues, we have a brief executive session.
Brief.
Brief.
Good grief.